The game Chapter 39. The day of the raiding game had finally arrived. Naruto and the others were sitting on a train owned by the Agara's clan, one of the remaining 33 devil clans of the 72 pillars. They were the second highest ranking clan amongst the 72 pillars. Holding the rank of Archduke, they were tasked with being the moderator between the Bael clan, the 4 great Satans, and the remaining noble devil clans. "It shouldn't take much longer for us to reach our destination," Ria said from where she sat on the couch. She had taken Naruto's left. Ofus was on his right. She seemed to be trying to drill a hole through his head. At least Kaneko and Revel weren't suffocating him by trying to sit on his lap. Instead, Kaneko was playing video games with Gasper while Revel watched them and tried to understand the mechanics behind the game. Revel had never played video games before coming to the human world. "Isn't Agara's a flying city or something?" asked Issei suddenly. He was sitting on another part of the same couch, but surrounding him was Asia, Rainier, and Xenovia. Irina was sitting between their two groups. She looked from one group to another as though unsure of which side to join. Rosweiss was with Irina and sitting between Naruto's and Issei's group, which Naruto was going to start calling Naruto's harem and Issei's harem so he didn't get them mixed up. However, unlike Irina who kept glancing back and forth between the respective harems, the former aide of Odin was staring at Naruto with a complicated expression. She was probably remembering their conversation in Kyoto. At one point during their visit to Kyoto, Rosweiss had gotten shit-face wasted, made a fool out of herself, and then lamented her lack of boyfriend. Naruto had told her that he would gladly date her. However, they hadn't been given a chance to go on a date since coming back home. Naruto was too busy dealing with the upcoming culture festival and training for the raiding game against Cyrorg in his peerage, while Rosweiss had been stuck in teacher meetings. "It is," Rias said. The floating island was created using incredibly complex and powerful magic from the old Mao era. Very few people understand how it works, though brother once informed me that Ajuka Beelzebub understands the intricacies behind it. Due to that, the current Beelzebub has servants working there to maintain the core and keep it from falling to the ground. "Pretty cool stuff," Issei said. "It is definitely cool," Kiba agreed. He was standing, unlike the rest of them, with his arms crossed over his chest. The princely knight looked at Issei and smiled. "I've never been there myself, but I've seen it from afar. Just looking at it from a distance is enough to give you chills. I can't imagine how much power must have been required to lift such a thing into the sky. Never mind keep it floating there." As he listened to Kiba talk, Naruto imagined the Chibaku Tensai technique that Nagato and Madara had been so fond of using. He didn't think this floating island would look like that, though. On that note, I should mention that the crystals used to create evil pieces are found in the Agara's clan's territory, Rias added. Members of the Agara's clan also possess the unique trait to control time to some degree, and they have the propriety to recover fugitives. This is why their first head was known as the devil who made deserters return. Revel provided a small but informative lesson after hearing what Rias said. "Now I'm really curious to see this floating city," Naruto admitted. "By the way, how can we get there by train if it's in the sky?" "There are actually 3 ways of entering the city," Azazel told them, holding up a hand and listing the ways off them. "The first is to teleport there using a magic circle. This way is only permitted to VIPs or when there is a special matter that needs attention. Because of how important Agara's city is, there are many people who might try to use this method to sabotage their operations, which is why we aren't using it. The second way is to use airships. We're going to be using the third method, which is by taking a gondola from the ground and going up." "That actually sounds pretty neat. I've never gone on a gondola before," Naruto admitted. "I'm sure it isn't anything special," Rainier mumbled. "You don't know that," Asia said, soft-spoken as always. "I bet it's a really nice place." Rainier sighed but didn't say anything to dispute the girl. Perhaps this was the reason Asia smiled. "I still find it so odd that these two became friends. Didn't Rainier try to kill her?" "HMPH. How many of your friends tried to kill you?" "That's a good point." Naruto quickly recalled all the friends he knew who, at one point, had tried to kill him, only to become his best friend. There were quite a few. The rest of the time inside of the train was spent discussing tactics for their upcoming raiding game, mixed in with the occasional quip from some of the more quiet individuals. One thing Naruto noticed as time went on was that Akano had grown increasingly quiet. She kept staring at Rainier with flagrant dislike. He couldn't tell if it was because of her proximity to Issei or those fallen angel wings of hers. From what he understood, Issei had already helped her overcome the problems she had with her fallen angel half, which meant her reason for staring was probably Rainire's closeness to Issei. At the same time, Akeno had given up all rights to be with Issei, having dumped him over a month prior, so she couldn't tell the other girl not to be near him. When we finally arrived at the train stop, our group was directed by several devils in fantasy armor that reminded Naruto of Saint Seiya. They led everyone to a large gondola that we were all asked to board. It wasn't long after they had boarded that the gondola began to move. Naruto, Issei, Asia, Irina, Xenovia, Roswise, and Ophis moved toward the windows and watched as they ascended into the sky. The view was fantastic. The landscape stretched out for miles, eventually shifting into the unique sky color only available in the underworld. "This is such an amazing view," Issei exclaimed. "It's breathtaking," Asia agreed. "It's okay," Rainier muttered with a sigh, though she didn't say anything to diminish the other two. "I've never been to the underworld before," Xenovia commented as she looked out the window. Her expression contained a complex mixture of emotions. "It isn't at all like what I expected." "I know," Irina exclaimed. "I was the same way the first time I visited." Revel, who was now standing immediately to Naruto's right, stared not at the scenery that passed them by, but at him. "What do you think of the view, Naruto-sama?" "I think it's pretty incredible," Naruto admitted. "I've seen a lot of things in my life, including floating islands, but the uniqueness of this island, the color of the sky, and the fact that we're in the underworld makes it something I've never seen before." As Naruto spoke, a pleased smile crossed Revel's face. "It is rather nice, isn't it? I've always wanted to visit Agara's city to learn more about the evil peace system so I can better utilize my bishop when I finally join a peerage." "You mean when you join my peerage, right?" said Naruto with a grin. "Why yes," Revel admitted, looking down with a blush. This would normally be the part where Kaneko said something snappy, but she had been moody ever since the interview last week. Naruto was sure she knew that he and Revel had sex in the hot spring. They hadn't told her, and she had never said anything about it, but she'd been very grumpy around them the morning after it happened. As Naruto and the others were conversing, Azazel was holding his own conversation with Rias. "I'm surprised they chose a stadium in the Agara's clan's territory for this raiding game," Rias was saying as she crossed her arms and frowned. "They might be the second most powerfully ranked family, but they don't really take part in raiding games very often. I think that's part of the reason why the stadium here was chosen," Azazel admitted. "You are aware of the dispute between the higher-ups on which stadium to use for this game, right?" While Rias was nodding, Naruto found himself growing curious and moved over to their conversation. He wanted to know what Azazel meant. "What's this about a dispute?" he asked. "The higher-ups from the current Mao faction wanted the raiding game to take place in either Gremory territory or the Mao territory, but the Bael family protested and said it should take place in the Bael territory. It's because the current 4 Great Saiyans aren't hereditary titles," Revel informed Naruto. "The Bael family places a heavy importance on lineage. What's more, they are the highest-ranking family among the 72 pillars, holding the rank of Great King, which they have held onto since time immemorial." As Naruto nodded along with Revel's words, Rias sighed and spoke up. "The Bael family is also extremely prideful. They look down on other devils and prefer sticking to the old tradition which states a devil's demonic power determines everything. They even go so far as to discriminate against their own family if they don't possess any demonic power. Currently, our two families are hostile toward each other because me, Searzex, and Milikas have inherited the powers of destruction that their family was famous for." Naruto thought he might get a headache as he listened to Rias speak. There was so much information that he knew he needed to remember, and, well, Naruto hated remembering crap like this. Part of him wished he could beat the Bael family up and be done with this stupid hostility toward Rias and her family. However, if he had learned one thing, it was that not everything could be solved with his fists. As much as he wished otherwise, "I believe we've gotten a little off topic here," Azazel said. "The point is, with the dispute between the Mao faction and the Bael family growing heated, it was decided that this raiding game would take place in Agara's territory because they are a neutral family. Given the current political upheaval between the two factions, do you think our match is being used in lieu of the war between the Mao Lucifer and the Great King Bael?" asked Kiba. I'm sure a lot of people will look at this rating game that way. Azazel stroked his chin thoughtfully. On the one hand, you got the Opie Dragon, Rias Gremory, and the legendary Fox God. Legendary what now? Naruto asked. And they are fighting against the strongest youth Cyroorg Biel, Azazel continued. While a lot of people won't care about the politics behind such a match-up, the bigwigs from the various families are definitely going to be politicking over this behind the scenes. He sighed and scratched his head. Fortunately, it isn't like either side will suffer politically for a loss. If you guys lost, the people from the Bale family would probably drag Searzek's name through the mud, but the same could be said for them if Cyroorg ends up losing. How does Cyroorg feel about all this? Asked Rias. You know him better than I do. Azazel shrugged. He's not the kind of guy who cares about the opinions of politicians. That man rose to prominence with nothing but his own physical strength. That said, he does have a lot of political connections who are only siding with him because of his strength. If he loses, I imagine some of the people who currently support him will withdraw that support, but that isn't something you should worry about. Naruto knew quite a bit about Cyroorg thanks to Rias and Azazel. Regardless of what hardships that man had gone through, of how much he had fought and bled to get where he was now, Naruto had no intention of going easy on him. Cyroorg was a man who mirrored Naruto in so many ways. Both had been born with a stigma, were hated by the people around them for something they couldn't control, and had worked hard to reach the top. A guy like that would hate it if someone went easy on them. Of course, Naruto also had his own dreams to fulfill, and he couldn't do that if he lost here. Is there any chance of the hero faction or other members of the Chaos Brigade from interrupting the raiding game? Asked Rossweiss. No chance. Naruto shook his head. I've already got Valley and the members of group watching the stadium, which reminds me, I've received a personal message from Valley to you, Eyes. Me? Issei blinked stupidly. What does he want with me? He said, I'm looking forward to the fight between the House of Bale and the Gremory Peerage. Fight to your heart's content and don't hold back. End message. Naruto grinned when he saw Issei's pale face. That guy sure loves you a lot, huh? Ah, please stop talking like that. Hearing a message like that is just creepy. As their conversation continued, the gondola arrived in Agaras. They stepped outside, where a group of fans, newscaster, and cameramen were waiting for them. Loud cheers and shouts of joy went up. Cameras flashed in their faces as everyone began snapping photos. Naruto heard there was a popular social media site called Heller or something. He was sure their faces would be all over it soon. A limousine was waiting for them when they arrived. Ravel had made the preparations well in advance so she could stay with Naruto instead of traveling out to Agaras City without them. He was impressed by her forethought and dedication to her tasks. After everyone squeezed into the spacious limousine, which came with a minibar and snacks, they began moving. Naruto glanced out the window and found several other cars following them. It looked like they belonged to the media. There were cameras situated on top of them. All of us have become especially popular since fighting against the Greek pantheon and rescuing Searzek and the other Maos. Ravel explained after sensing Naruto's shock. You'll probably want a manager at some point. You and Issei will definitely want one, actually. Do most devils get a manager? Asked Issei. Not usually, Rias said with a shake of her head. Management of a devil is often left up to either their master or their family. But some devils become especially popular and end up going on to become sensations in the underworld like Seraphal Leviathan. Actually, she has a manager who handles her daily affairs and sets her schedule. Who is that? Asked a curious Naruto. Her sister, Rias said with an amused smile. Are you nominating yourself for the position of Naruto's manager? Azazel teased Ravel. Ravel blushed, but Naruto placed a hand on her back and smiled. He honestly believed she would make a great manager. That said, she was going to be his manager and not Issei's. He wasn't willing to share her. As Naruto began wondering about who would make a good manager for Issei, the limousine continued heading toward the stadium. Devil Ninja. Naruto sat near the window and gazed outside at the many facilities located within this city in the sky. Among the many amenities located in Agaras, there was the giant stadium that hosted various exhibitions for different matches and arts. It was called Agaras Dome. The name was quite apartment. It looked like a giant domed structure. That was not their destination. The place where Naruto and his friends were driven to was a high-class hotel located next to Agaras Stadium. It looked like an expensive high-rise, the kind Naruto expected to find in the human world. Xenovia gave an impressed whistle when she saw the massive structure after stepping out of the limousine. We entered the spacious lobby, which featured a polished floor, extravagant chandelier, and artful decorations. While everyone was admiring the artwork, a bellboy came up to them and said he would lead the group to their rooms. Their match wouldn't start until later that night. Until then, they were essentially free to do whatever they wanted, though they first needed to put away their belongings. As they were about to begin walking, another group suddenly appeared. They wore large cloaks with hoods that obscured their features and kept Naruto from seeing their faces. A cold atmosphere surrounded this group. Naruto couldn't put his finger on who they were. Not until he saw the person standing in the center. Naruto wouldn't call the figure in the center a man so much as two-thirds of a man. Men were made of blood, flesh, and bones, but this guy was just bones. Literally. He was just a freaking skeleton wearing a priestly outfit. He wore a cap called a mitre on his head, and he held a staff in his left hand. An aura of power radiated from him, more so than anyone Naruto had seen in quite a while. In fact, this man gave off a similar power to the Greek gods he had fought, which meant, this man is definitely a god. I figured as much. Upon seeing their group, the skeleton stopped walking. He glanced in Naruto's direction, the empty sockets of his eyes glowing as he shifted his gaze from Naruto to everyone else. If it isn't the Gremory group and the governor of the fallen angels, the skeleton said. However, he wasn't speaking from his mouth. It was like his magic was projecting the words. His mouth didn't move at all. Azazel gave a sarcastic smile. If it isn't the god who governs death. It's been a long time, Hades. I never expected a god who hates devils and fallen angels more than anything would come all this way, and to think, you've even brought so many Grim Reapers with you. So this was the Greek pantheon's god of the underworld, huh? Naruto filed this information away for later use. You certainly know how to talk a big game, you damn crow. It's been so noisy in the upper realms of the underworld that I decided to take a look and see what was going on. As Hades spoke, Naruto tilted his head and wondered about something. So, Hades is a Greek god, right? He is, Rias whispered. Naruto nodded and didn't bother keeping his voice down as he said, I wonder where Hades was when I was kicking the asses of the other Greek gods. I get not wanting to have your ass handed to you on a silver platter. But is hiding in the underworld when your fellow gods are in trouble really the best thing to do? The words caused the entire hotel to freeze. Even Azazel looked at Naruto like he was an idiot. However, Naruto wore an innocent smile like he didn't realize he'd just insulted the god of the underworld. Hades turned to him, a surge of killing intent spilling from his body, causing many people around them to shiver. Even the other members of the Gremory peerage were not immune to his potent aura of death. Naruto, however, who was the recipient for this killing intent, merely smiled as if he couldn't feel a thing. Che. The killing intent suddenly vanished as Hades made a scoffing noise. I heard all about how you fought against my younger brothers and their brood, but I don't personally care what happens to those fools. Regardless of how strong you might think you are, I recommend for your own safety that you not try to purposefully displease me, child. I'll keep that in mind. You're such a nice skeleton. Naruto gave the skeleton a cheery smile. Hades didn't pay any more attention to Naruto as he turned to look at Issei. His eye sockets became intensely focused, to the point where it looked like they were glowing. Welsh dragon. How long has it been since I last saw you? This certainly brings back memories. I can still recall the time when you and the vanishing dragon rampaged through the depths of hell. The words sparked some curiosity within Issei, but the others seemed to know about this incident. Naruto didn't. However, he assumed it was sometime before the great battle between the angels, devils, and fallen angels. Perhaps the two dragons were rampaging before then and merely got mixed up in that final climactic battle between the forces of heaven and hell. You are all very lucky that I'm not here to collect souls today. I merely wish to enjoy myself for now. Doing anything more than observing today's event would be far too much trouble. The skeleton took one look at Naruto, shifted his gaze to Office by his side, and then moved past their group. Naruto turned his head to study the skeleton as he and his entourage of Grim Reapers left. While Issei and a few others wiped the sweat from their foreheads, Naruto was curious about this particular god. He felt quite a bit stronger than some of the other Greek gods he had come across. That was freaky, Kaneko muttered. I was really startled, Ravel added. I remember hearing about Hades from my senior back when I was a Valkyrie, but I never imagined his aura would be so overwhelmingly powerful, Rosweiss muttered as she placed a hand against her chest. It felt like he had grabbed a hold of my soul just by looking at me. Naruto glanced down at Rosweiss's left hand. It was shaking. With something of a frown, he reached out and grabbed it. He would have congratulated himself on being so smooth, but Rosweiss squawked the moment he grabbed her hand and jerked out of his grasp. He felt startled, but then shook his head. Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you, he said. Wow, no, I just wasn't expecting it. Rosweiss's cheeks turned red, and she looked like she was about to say something, but then Ophis and Ravel chose that moment to grab his hands. Naruto wasn't sure if they were jealous. They shouldn't have been. In either event, when this happened, Rosweiss snapped her mouth shut and awkwardly looked away. That skeleton guy's pressure was intense, Issei added, either heedless of what happened or diverting attention from Rosweiss. Naruto was betting on him being heedless. I've never felt anything like it. After Issei finished speaking, Azazel rubbed the back of his neck as if working out a kink and said, I'm not surprised you feel that way. Hades is ranked among the top most powerful deities in the entire world, after all. Are you saying he's stronger than you? Asked Rias. He's a lot stronger than me, Azazel admitted with a sigh. I'm not sure if he could beat Searsex, but I know for a fact that I can't win against him. Not only is he powerful, but he and his Grim Reapers are creepy little bastards. I recommend you guys don't go and try to start any trouble with him. Especially you, Naruto. Azazel gave Naruto a serious stare. Don't think I couldn't tell what you were doing. You might be strong. You might even be strong enough to fight against Hades, but that doesn't mean you should pick fights with gods for no good reason. Naruto was about to reply with a suitably witty comment about how he never picked fights and only finished them, but someone else suddenly shouted at them. You, strange boy with the whisker marks, so we meet again. A pair of men walked up to their group, and Naruto immediately recognized the two. How could he not, since he fought them both back when Searsex and the other faction leaders had been under the control of Loki? At present, Poseidon was wearing just a pair of pants and no shirt, but Zeus wore a crown and a toga. Both were barefoot. It's my two favorite gods, Naruto crowed in surprise as a wide smile crossed his face. How are you two doing? It's been so long, we should celebrate our reunion by going out for drinks sometime. The two gods came up short, perhaps uncertain over how to respond. However, while Zeus looked like he wanted nothing more than to complain to him, Poseidon eventually nodded. I'm actually rather curious about you, he admitted. I wouldn't mind going out for drinks sometime. Ha ha. We'll have a huge party, Naruto agreed with good cheer. My boyfriend is making friendly with gods now, Rias sighed. Ravel patted her on the back. There. As the conversation between Naruto and Poseidon continued, having changed from parties in general to what kind of alcohol they should drink, Zeus decided to ignore the boy in favor of needling Azazel about his lack of a significant other. Naruto kept a careful eye on that conversation. It was rather interesting to see Azazel being pushed around. Then again, Zeus might not be as strong as Hades, but was far stronger than Azazel. Not only did Poseidon and Zeus show up, but the former Dragon King Tannen, who trained Issei during the tournament a while back, appeared in a miniaturized chibi form. Wow! You're so tiny! Issei exclaimed. Of course, Tannen said. A true form is too big, so I need to use this miniature form in order to fit through the elevator. Oh, Issei blinked. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I expect you to give this rating game your all, eyes. The man you're facing might be called the strongest youth, but you are in no way inferior to him. Give him hell. I will. Issei cheered. You can count on me. While Issei replied with great confidence, Naruto was sure the boy was nervous. As the bearer of the Welsh dragon, he had a lot of expectations placed on his shoulders. Unlike Naruto, who was an unknown entity until his battle with Riser Phoenix. Of course, Naruto always did well under pressure anyway. He thrived on pressure. He was a fucking pressure cooker. Are you giving yourself a pep talk? No, as the conversations continued all around, Naruto noticed Rosweiss looking around the lobby floor with a sad frown. Something wrong? He asked. Rosweiss gave him a sad smile. Not really. I was just thinking about how I would have normally seen Lord Odin cavorting with a woman right about now. Naruto reached out and grabbed Roswice's hand. This time, she did not jerk her hand out of his. She grabbed it tightly as though he was her lifeline. After the conversations all ended, their group was guided to a personal waiting room, though Naruto thought it was more like a penthouse suite. Their couches, tables, a kitchen, and they even had training equipment, something that Naruto would not have expected. Some of their members like Xenovia, Issei, Kiba, and Kaneko changed into their jerseys and began doing warm-up exercises. Naruto joined them for a while, but he was mostly just making sure his body stayed limber. Since this was an important match, he didn't want to start fighting and get a cramp or something. However, they didn't do much more than warm up. Exercising right now wouldn't help them increase their strength any more than their current level. After exercising, the group sat down around the table and began discussing strategy. Naruto sat between Revel and Ophis, while Issei sat between Xenovia and Asia. Rainier sat beside Asia, but she was bitterly glaring at Xenovia. While Rias sat at what constituted the head of the couch, Akino stood immediately behind her. Gasper, Kiba, Kaneko, Roswice, and Irina were spread out between these two groups. Cyroorg has always been a very straightforward fighter, Revel began. In all honesty, any strategy we could theoretically come up with is likely to be destroyed by his fists. Instead of focusing on strategy, I should tell you about his abilities, namely, his Tuki. Pausing, Revel made sure to look at Naruto when she said this, letting him know how important it was for him to pay attention. When Cyroorg uses his Tuki, his speed, power, and defense are all drastically increased. What's more, he's tamed Regulus, one of the 13 Longinus, and can use its balance breaker, Regulus Ray Leather Rex, which augments his power even further. So, basically, this dude is a powerhouse and we should probably leave him to Sensei, Issei said. Most of the people present nodded since the words made sense. Rias, however, shook her head. I actually don't want to use Naruto for this match. When everyone stared at her like she was crazy, the redhead smiled and explained her reasons. Naruto is incredibly powerful, but I feel like if I use him too much in a rating game, people will begin to say that I only won because I have Naruto. I'd like people to say I won because I have a great peerage and am a good leader, not because one of my members is stupidly overpowered. I resent that comment, Naruto said without any heat, but then he nodded. But I do agree that I would be better off as a trump card. It's always good to have an ace in the hole. Nodding several times, the group continued to discuss their strategy when the door suddenly opened and a young woman with silver hair and wearing a maid outfit walked in. Good evening, everyone, the woman said. Graphia, Rias greeted in surprise. Lady Rias, I am pleased to see you are well. Graphia bowed politely. I apologize for appearing so abruptly, but I wanted to ask if I could have Issei Hyodo come with me. Sirzex-sama has asked him to head up to the VIP room. I believe he wants to show you something. While Issei was confused, Rias told him to go on up. As he and Graphia left, the door closing shut behind them, everyone once more began discussing strategy. Devil Ninja, Revel, Irina, and Ophis were not present as the Gremory peerage waited in the corridor connected to the entrance of Agara's stadium. From what Naruto understood, they would be watching the match via the VIP booths where Sirzex and other high-ranking officials were. They had changed into their Kuo Academy uniforms like always, but according to Rias, these uniforms were different than their usual ones. I had these specially made for this game, Rias admitted with a shrug. They're made from a material that's resistant to heat, cold, bullets, and even magic to some degree. They won't protect you from a strong attack, but they should at least reduce the amount of damage we take. The ones not wearing a school uniform was Asia, Xenovia, and Roswice. Xenovia was in her old Catholic Church battle uniform, which was a form-fitting leather outfit that showed off every curve and crevice of Power Body. On the other hand, Roswice was wearing her Valkyrie armor, while Asia wore her nun's habit. As Naruto stood there with his arms crossed, he paid attention to what the others were doing. Kiba was actually posing similarly to him, but Issei was pacing with restless energy, while Gasper was looking nervous because he didn't have a paper bag over his head. Kaneko seemed pretty chill. On the other hand, Akeno was standing beside Rias and fidgeting ever so slightly, though Naruto had a hard time believing she was nervous about the upcoming match. Everyone, Rias suddenly said. The match that's about to begin isn't a real fight. It's a rating game. That said, just because it isn't real doesn't give you an excuse to not take this seriously. Everyone is going to be watching this match, so be sure to give it your all." Ria's words had their intended effect, making everyone relax while simultaneously motivating them. Issei stopped pacing, Gasper was no longer sweating, and Kiba wore a small smile. Asia's shoulders slumped, Zenobia relaxed, and Rosswise took a deep breath and placed a hand over her chest. Kaneko merely scooched closer to Naruto. He placed a hand on her head and began caressing her hair. Naruto hoped this meant she was no longer angry at him. Just then, an announcement went up. "Ladies and gentlemen, the battle of the century is about to begin. From the East Gate, we have Team Biel led by the strongest youth, Cyroorg Biel." Cheers, screams, and cries of joy came from beyond the corridor, easily heard by everyone here. The entire dome was shaking from the sound. Naruto could feel the floor vibrating underneath his feet. "This guy sounds like one of those commentators who work for the WWF, Kaneko muttered blandly. Naruto chuckled as he rubbed her cat ears. "Okay," Issei began pacing. "Now I'm getting nervous again. I don't think I can do this," Gasper cried. "Don't worry, Gaspy," Kaneko said seriously. "If you think of everyone as a pumpkin, the crowd won't bother you." Naruto shook his head as he listened to their conversation, but then he straightened his back when the announcer spoke up again. "And coming from the West Gate, it's Team Gremory led by none other than Rias Gremory, the Ruined Princess." At this announcement, the crowd became even more rambunctious. The ground shook as everyone traveled down the corridor and exited through the gate. As they emerged from the gate, Naruto looked around and immediately spotted the floating island that sat above the spacious circular stadium. It looked like a floating stadium composed of numerous rocks. Some of the smaller rocks were orbiting a single large rock, which he could only assume was where the battles would take place. Team Biel was standing on one of those rocks. It was larger than some of the ones orbiting the battlefield, but smaller than the battlefield itself. "Will Team Gremory please head to their base?" asked the announcer. Following Ria's lead, the members of the Gremory peerage walked up the snake-like staircase that connected to a floating boulder on the opposite side of the stadium. As they arrived at the top, Naruto looked across the field, towards Cyroorg and his peerage. Their eyes locked. However, while Cyroorg was burning with fighting spirit, Naruto merely shook his head. Rias did not intend to use him for this battle. Naruto wondered what sort of battle this raiding game would be. They hadn't been told about what the fight would entail. According to Azazel, they were randomizing the fights in order to make them more exciting. Located on the floating island that was their base, a chair for each person in their group was situated at evenly spaced intervals. About a meter from the chairs was a mysterious-looking stand. The only other object to note was the transfer magic circle, which was located on the next floor above them. Wandering up to the edge, Naruto peered down at the floating boulder between the Biel and Gremory teams and frowned when he saw that it was just a rock with no extraneous or unique features. This didn't look like any kind of battlefield. Were they planning on having them do something else? At that moment, a man wearing gaudy clothing with a microphone on his ear appeared on a giant monitor positioned above the stadium. "Good evening, everyone. My name is No Gamagan from the House of Gamagem, and I will be your announcer today. I shall be commenting on the raiding game as the battles take place, so be sure to listen closely," No announced. "With me is the arbiter for this game, Rudiger Rosenkreutz." A magic circle appeared in midair, and a handsome man with silver hair longer even than Ria's red locks appeared. He was dressed in a uniform that made Naruto think of someone from the military. It was crisp and neat. The many people inside of the stadium, and especially the women, cheered the moment he appeared. "That man is a reincarnated devil who used to be a human," Kaneko told me. "Now he's an ultimate class devil and holds the 7th rank as one of the top competitors in the raiding games. In other words, he's hot stuff." Naruto nodded as he looked at the man. "I kinda want to fight him instead of Cyroorg." "Me too. I want to kick his ass," Issei muttered. "Damn pretty boy." While everyone rolled their eyes at Issei, Naruto understood that having someone ranked so high up on the raiding game totem pole merely showed how important this match was. "And now it is time to unveil our special guests," No exclaimed. "With us here as a commentator today is none other than Lord Azazel, the governor of the fallen angels. I hope all of you will give a big round of applause to welcome him." As these words were spoken, another figure suddenly appeared on the screen. His blonde and black hair, slightly rugged appearance, and satisfied smirk was all very familiar to them. Azazel looked at all the people present as he grinned and waved. "Hello, everyone, it's great to be here today." What is Azazel-sensei doing as a commentator?" asked a shocked Issei. No one had an answer for him. Not even Naruto saw this coming, though he wasn't going to make a big deal out of it like some people were. "Lord Azazel, you're rather famous in the underworld for having a good relationship with Lord Sears X Lucifer and various faction leaders, as well as your sacred gear research. I've even heard that you've been helping personally coach the Gremory team. From your personal and professional standpoint, how do you think this game will go?" "That's a good question," Azazel said with a smile. "Both teams are incredibly powerful. Sarorg Bale isn't called the strongest youth for no reason. However, the Gremory team aren't slouches either. Both sides are fairly well-rounded, but the Gremory team has two trump cards in their mix. The Red Dragon Emperor and Naruto Uzumaki. That said, the Red Dragon Emperor is currently unable to use his full power without touching a girl's breasts, and I don't think Rias Gremory wants to rely on Naruto's power, which is often a game-changer on its own. You bring up some very good points, and I'm excited to hear more of your insights," No said before switching topics. Of course, Azazel is not the only one commentating with us today. There are two other people here for this match. With us are the voice of God Metatron and the current first ranker of the rating game, the reigning champion, Emperor Dhauser Belial. Metatron is commentating too. Now it was Naruto's turn to be shocked as the familiar face of Metatron appeared alongside an unfamiliar face. Naruto only glanced briefly at the man with white hair, olive-colored skin, and an ostentatious outfit with a high collar worthy of any douchebag. "Looks like it," Kaneko said in a bland voice as she patted Naruto's arm like she was trying to console him, though he was anything but consoled. "It is great to be here today, Dagazaru," Metatron said in a bright voice. He looked so out of place among the devils. "I am very excited to see how Ninja-sama does in the rating game today." "Ninja-sama?" No looked at Azazel. "That's what he called Naruto Uzumaki," Azazel answered. Ah, No looked confused still but nodded anyway. "I hope everyone is doing well this evening," the white-haired man who appeared with Metatron spoke in a bright, cheerful voice. "I'm Dhauser Belial, and I'll be doing the commentary for the match between Team Gremory and Team Biel alongside Azazel and Metatron." Naruto really didn't know how to think about all this. However, he was trying not to let Metatron's sudden appearance bother him. They were about to fight in a rating game against Sarorg Biel, and even though he was being used only as a trump card, the idea of going up against such a strong team was just too exciting. "I know this might seem a bit sudden, but I was wondering if I could ask you three a question regarding the two teams," No began. "Namely, is there anything we need to watch out for or pay attention to during this match?" "Something you should definitely pay attention to is Ninja-sama during battles," Metatron said immediately. "Just like any great shinobi, Ninja-sama is incredibly deceptive. He acts loud and brash, but it's a smokescreen to hide his true abilities, Dagazaru. You go in thinking he is nothing but a fool, and then he hits you with a surprise attack you weren't expecting, like Bam, and Blam, and Kablooey, Dagazaru." Naruto couldn't facepalm fast enough. "It isn't just Naruto that you'll need to watch out for on Team Gremory," Azazel said. "While all of them are talented, the second big hitter is definitely Issei Hyodo, the legendary Oppai Dragon. He has the ability to enter his balance breaker the moment he touches a pair of tits. What's more, he's become a lot more proficient at using the pawn's ability of promotion to change his fighting style, which has turned him into a highly versatile powerhouse." As Azazel spoke of Issei's abilities, the young pervert in question was crying over how the fallen angel talked about his ability to enter balance breaker by touching breasts. It seemed he was ashamed by this fact. Well, Naruto thought it was amusing, but he understood that everyone had their shameful side. Personally, he felt Issei should embrace his perv. Actually, he was surprised his friend wasn't already embracing it, or maybe he just got embarrassed when other people talked about it. When it got to Dhauser's turn, the man spoke in the same cheerful voice as before. "While Sarorg Biel makes an excellent king, his real talent lies in the incredible power he possesses, which makes him easily one of the strongest people among the younger generation. He has several power abilities that..." As the man spoke, Rias Gremory stared at the screen with a determined gaze. One of Rias' dreams was to attain the champion title of the rating games. Doing so would bring her one step closer to stepping out of her family's and older brother's shadow. Of course, Naruto planned to be there for her every step of the way since his goal was to become the strongest devil in the history of ever. "That's going to be me one day," Ria said as she continued staring at the screen, her hands clenched. "However, right now we need to defeat the person standing before us. Everyone," she turned to face the group. "Please lend me your strength. Let's show everyone why you shouldn't mess with Team Gremory." Everyone in their peerage cheered, even Xenovia, who was still new to devilhood, and Rosswise, who looked like she was going to die from embarrassment. As Rias finished giving her small pep talk, the comments from the four on the screen continued. "As you all know, because of the recent activities by the terrorist group known as the Chaos Brigade, the importance and price of Phoenix Tears has rapidly risen. Preparing Phoenix Tears for the rating games has been difficult thanks to that. However," No pointed to a huge monitor, where two small bottles sitting against a velvety cushion inside of a box appeared. "Thanks to the kindness of the current head of Phoenix, it was decided that each team would be given Phoenix Tears for this game." The stadium erupted with cheers. Naruto could only shake his head. It sounded like they were excited because having Phoenix Tears meant the battles could last longer. Naruto placed a hand against his chest, where a necklace filled with Revel's tears rested. He wasn't planning to use them. According to Rias, receiving the personal tears from a member of the House of Phoenix was essentially the same as a man or woman stating their intentions to court someone. To him, these tears were a symbol of his relationship with Revel. "Now then, there is a special rule for this particular rating game," No said, which caused everyone to settle down. "Before I explain what this rule is, I would like to explain how this rating game will work. This isn't the typical game where all the team members will be playing at the same time. It will be done in a one-on-one tournament-style matchup." Rias perked up when she heard this, her eyes widening in surprise. However, she quickly hardened her gaze and cast a glance at Cyrorg and his team. "Now to explain the special rule, which will determine the lineup for the matches. Will each king move toward the stand located in their bases?" asked No. Rias and Cyrorg walked forward until they were standing in front of their respective stand. Once they stopped in front of them, something fell out. Naruto stared at the dice, then looked at the monitor, which was also displaying the dice from both sides. They looked like standard six-sided dice. The dice in front of you is the key to this special rule, which is called dice figure. Naruto, Issei, Asia, and Xenovia looked confused as they heard of this dice figure rule. None of them had taken part in or seen a professional rating game. Dice figure is a special rule that's actually quite common in rating games, Kiba explained to the confused members. The ones we've been in up until now have all been standard matches. There are some games like this that rely on dice, while there are others where you have to take as many flags on the field as you can. That one is called scramble flag. Dice figure, as you can probably figure out, relies on dice to impose special rules and restriction that make the rating game more exciting. "Ah," Naruto said while Issei and Xenovia smacked their left fists into the palms of their respective right hands. "Let me explain how dice figure works, so those who do not know about this rule will understand. The dice prepared has 6 sides like a standard dice, and you can roll a number from 1 to 6. The numbers rolled will determine which pieces can be sent for that particular match based on their value." "I see," Naruto muttered as he cupped his chin. "So the dice essentially determines the fate of our match." That meant even if Rias didn't want to use him, there was a chance he'd end up fighting against someone anyway, didn't it? No, wait. She could still choose not to send him out even if she rolled the amount needed, couldn't she? Chess in the human world has set values for their chess pieces. The standard value for the pawn is 1, the knight and bishop is 3, the rook is 5, and the queen is 9. The evil pieces for the rating game also use this value standard. While there are times when specific pieces can surpass the value set by their evil piece, we'll be using the standard values for this particular game. Naruto paid especially close attention this time, since he would need to know all this if he wanted to support Rias. As he did, he noted what No said about the evil pieces and surpassing limitations. All of them were pieces that could do that. Kiba, Issei, and Gaspar had their balance breaker. Xenovia was a powerful holy sword user. Rosswise was a former Valkyrie of incredible talent. Akano was the daughter of Barakiel. Asia had Twilight Healing. And Kaneko was a Nekusho, devil hybrid with the ability to enter Sage mode. For this match, both kings will roll the dice, and the total value rolled will determine which combatants can be sent to battle. For example, if the total value rolled is 8, then the kings can send a servant who will fit within that value like a rook or a bishop. If they decide to send out a pawn, then 8 pawns can be sent out. Of course, you can also mix up this value by sending out a rook and a knight. Also, servants who have consumed several evil pieces will have the value of their total values, so a servant like Issei Hyodo who has consumed 8 pieces will have a value of 8. As the man explained how the game will work, Naruto found a small hole in their logic. However, No quickly explained what he was thinking about. Since both Rias Gremory and Cyroorg Bale's teams don't have a piece with a standard value of 1 or 2, anytime the total values rolled turns out to be smaller than the smallest value of 2, both kings will have to roll again. As Naruto nodded in appreciation of learning this, No continued. The participation of the kings in the match will depend on the value which has been given to them by the people from the judging committee's estimation of their worth beforehand. Of course, just like every rating game, the game ends when one team's king is defeated. So depending on an arbitrary value that had been decided beforehand by a committee, it was possible that Cyroorg would be allowed to come out. While that sounded potentially problematic, Rias could always send out Naruto, who was only worth a value of 1 because he was a fairy piece. I wonder what value the judging committee has estimated Rias and Cyroorg to be, Naruto asked of no one in particular. No one will know that until they announce it, Akano decided to explain. However, the value they are given is likely to be calculated based on the strength of the kings themselves, the value of their servants, and possibly even by comparing them with the strength of their opponents. That value changes depending on the game and the king's reputation. Makes sense, Naruto said with a nod. Now that I have explained how this rating game is going to work, I'll share with you the value each king has been given. There was a slight pause, which was probably to increase dramatic tension. Cyroorg Bael has been given a value of 12, while Rias Gremory has a value of 11. It's a pretty close matchup, but it looks like Cyroorg is one value higher than Rias. Cyroorg's high ranking made sense. He'd taken part in a number of rating games already and was known as the strongest youth. On the other hand, Rias was new to rating games, wasn't as well known as Cyroorg because she lived in the human world, and was considered a generally soft-hearted person. However, it seemed her stock had risen thanks to her recent victories at the rating games before Loki's attack and perhaps even thanks to the events back in Greece. Do you think Cyroorg will appear in the first round if they roll a 12? Asked Issei. I doubt it. Naruto shook his head and explained his thoughts before Issei could ask about them. Even if Cyroorg comes out and wins the entire rating game, his own ranking will drop. A one-man team doesn't get rated very high, since this isn't a tournament but a match that relies on teamwork and utilizing your pieces to the best of your abilities. Don't forget that this broadcast is also live, Kiba added. If he comes out early, even if he decimates our entire team, it will make his estimation in the eyes of the people drop. A king who can't use his servants well isn't a good king. This is also a great opportunity to showcase the talent of his evil pieces. That said, he will definitely show up once he's revealed everything his servants can do, you can be sure of that. Issei nodded to show he understood what Kiba and Naruto told him. Even if his estimation and ranking wouldn't drop, I don't think Cyroorg would appear at the start even if we rolled a 12, Rias said. Like our team, his went through incredibly tough training so they could fight during this match. He'll want to give his servants a chance to show off what they have learned. Rias looked at Asia, saying that, sending out Asia, either by herself or as part of a team, will be a bad idea. They'll aim for her since she's our healer. That's why I want you to remain here and heal everyone after each match. It will give us one more advantage. I hope you understand why I'm doing this, Asia. Of course I do. Asia beamed at Rias. Don't worry. You can count on me to heal everyone's injuries. I hope you all remember to return safely so I can heal you. Don't go losing, okay? Roger. Everyone shouted together. As the group responded to Asia's encouraging words, Naruto thought about their situation. Without Asia, they only had 8 combatants, but it wasn't like they were lacking in firepower. What's more, they could heal themselves after every battle, something Team Bael couldn't afford to do. I hope both sides are ready, No suddenly exclaimed. Because the rating game between Team Bael and Team Gremory is about to begin. And with that announcement, the rating game was finally underway. Devil Ninja, will both kings step forward? Urged on by No, Rias and Cyroorg stood in front of their stands. Naruto felt a sense of tension come over the crowd. It felt like everyone was standing on pins and needles, or maybe fire and brimstone. Yeah. Thinking on it, this was hell, so fire and brimstone made more sense. We will start the first match now. Will both kings hold the dice? Rias grabbed the dice. Naruto felt the tension increase. Issei looked like he was about to bite his nails. Asia was praying, and even Akano and Kiba seemed unable to stand still. Heck, Kaneko was the most unflappable person he knew, and she had just grabbed his pant leg like it was a lifeline. And roll. At No's announcement, Rias and Cyborg rolled the dice. Naruto watched the monitor as the dice rolled across the stands and then stopped. It looks like Rias Gremory has rolled a 2, while Cyborg Biel also rolled a 5. That makes a total value of 7, so any servant or servants who are within that value can be called out to battle. Be sure to choose your servants wisely. You have 5 minutes to make your decision. Rias turned to look at everyone in peerage. All of them straightened as she gazed at them with a determined appearance. Since the total value is 7, that means we have several options open to us. We can either choose to send out 2 servants who value 3, making for a total of 6, or we can bring out 1 servant who values 5. This means choosing between a combination of Kiba, Xenovia, and Gasper, or choosing either Kaneko or Rossweiss. Who does Cyborg have to send out? Asked Kiba. He crossed his arms and frowned. I think knowing what servants he has available can help us determine who he'll send out first. Cyborg has 7 servants he can send out, Akano reported. His 2 bishops are Coriana Andrielphus and Mistita Sabnok. Both of them come from a distinct devil family. He also has his knights Liba Crisel and Baruka Furkaz, followed by his rooks, Gandoma Balam and Ladora Bune. All of them have their strengths and weaknesses, so there's no telling who he'll send out. He might also send out Regulus, Rias said with an intense sigh. Regulus is a pawn who took exactly 7 pieces to revive as a devil. He's incredibly powerful and Cyborg's trump card. Wouldn't that mean he won't use Regulus? Asked Xenovia. Possibly, or he might decide to bring out Regulus in the first match to throw us off balance, Rias said. Everyone grew pensive at her words. None of them really knew what to say, so they didn't say anything. Even Naruto couldn't claim to know what the right choice was in this regard. He didn't know Cyborg well enough to say who the man would choose to fight. I'm going to send out Xenovia and Gasper, Rias decided at last. Gasper, I want you to take some of Aiza's blood to activate your balance breaker. Freeze whoever you fight so Xenovia can overwhelm them with Durandal. Even if he decides to send out one of his rooks, it won't matter how strong their defensive power is in the face of a holy sword. I am really scared, but I'll do my best, Gasper said as he clenched his hands. What if he sends out Regulus? Asked Xenovia. Then do what you can to defeat him. If you can't defeat him, then do your best to injure him, Rias said. Understood. The 5 minutes are almost up. No called out. Will those participating in this round please make their way to the transfer circle? It will transfer you to a battlefield that has been prepared in a different dimension. The battlefield will be picked randomly from several that have been made in advance. Until the combatants are transferred to the battlefield, the bases on both sides will be placed under a barrier so neither side can see who is being selected. Okay. I'm going, Xenovia said. I am going too, Gasper added. Issei made a small cut on his finger and let Gasper lick the blood. Naruto would never forget the paleness of Issei's face, nor the confusion he saw there. It was enough to make him want to break out laughing. Xenovia walked over to the teleportation circle first. The circle on the floor began glowing with a bright light, and then Xenovia vanished. Naruto looked up at the largest monitor hanging from the stadium, which showed a green prairie filled with grass and other plants. As Xenovia appeared on the monitor, Gasper stepped onto the magic circle next, disappeared, and appeared next to her. Of course, they were not the only 2 who had shown up. The other person who had appeared was massive, shirtless, and easily towered over Xenovia and Gasper. In fact, even if Gasper stood on Xenovia's shoulders, Naruto didn't think they could match this guy in height. He had thick arms and legs, a broad chest, and had strange outcroppings along his body that made him look like a rock monster. They made an odd contrast to his blue pants. It looks like Cyborg decided to send Gandoma Balam. He belongs to one of the remaining 72 pillars, a family known for their superhuman strength. However, while he has a high amount of strength and magic resistance, he won't have much immunity to a holy sword or Gasper's forbidden Balorview. Akano held her hands to her cheek as she looked at Rias. Did you know Cyrorg would send him out? Rias shook her head. I didn't, but I believed he would be under the assumption that I'd send out a rook since I'm known for relying on servants with a good deal of attack power instead of finesse to attack. Rias smiled. Of course, Xenovia is a power fighter, which most people won't realize. They'll think she relies on speed the same as Kiba because she's a knight, which gives her an inherent advantage, especially if Jesper can stop their opponent from moving long enough to let her strike a finishing blow. Akano and everyone else nodded at her words. It was Rias' style to rely on power-type attackers to dish out punishment and use finesse fighters like Kiba for defense, backup, and counterattacks. Of course, that was exactly what she was doing here, but no one would know that because Xenovia was a knight. Not only would this throw them off balance, it would also make them mistake Xenovia for a fighter like Kiba, adding an extra layer of surprise. Ho ho! It looks like Rias Gremory has chosen a knight and a bishop to battle, No exclaimed. Meanwhile, Cyrorg Bael has chosen one of his rooks. What do you three make of this? Is there anything you can tell us about these servants? I only know about Ninja-sama and Kaneko-chan, Dagazaru, so I can't say much about these two, Metatron said. About the only thing I know is that Gasper Vladi, the bishop, has the sacred gear, Forbidden Balorview, Dagazario. Not only does Gasper have a powerful sacred gear, but Xenovia is a newly acquired servant. Azazel added his own commentary. Being brand new, she's never fought in a raiding game before, and no one is sure exactly what kind of abilities she has. That said, she used to be a member of the church, so it is safe to assume she has sword fighting experience like Kiba Yuto. As a rook, Gandoma has incredible defense and physical strength, Dehauser exclaimed. As a member to the House of Balam, his strength is already incredible, but when you combine that strength with the powers of a rook, it increases to an incredible degree. His magic resistance is so high he's immune to almost all types of magic. Even outnumbered 2 to 1, I believe he'll be able to hold his own. Well, I suppose we'll find out soon, No said. Let the match begin. Once No said the match had begun, everyone paid attention to the monitor, where they could see Xenovia, Gasper, and Gandoma. Not only could they see the three perfectly, but they could hear everything that was being said. Gasper, I'd like you to let me test out this guy's power before you do anything, Xenovia said. Huh? Okay, Gasper nodded several times. Xenovia reached out with her hand as strange distortions filled the air at her side. Something appeared in mid-air. It was a handle. A bright blue hand that Xenovia wrapped her fingers around. She pulled on the handle, bringing forth a massive sword with a blue blade and gold edges. Naruto recognized Durandal, which she had used to fight Irina with during their time in Kyoto. So you're a holy sword user, are you? Gandoma said as he shifted his feet across the ground. I had not expected Rias Gremory to have another person capable of wielding holy swords on her side. It seems I'll have to be cautious. You can be as cautious as you want, Xenovia said, it still won't make a difference. Launching herself off the ground, Xenovia rushed forward and swung Durandal at Gandoma, who seemed to think better of blocking her attack and dodged it instead. Her downward slash struck the ground and caused it to crack. Despite dodging, the shockwave was enough to make Gandoma stumble. Xenovia tried to capitulate on this by attacking him with another powerful swing. It seems you're a power fighter, Gandoma said calmly. I had not expected that, however, this makes us even. Does it? Xenovia swung Durandal several more times, and each time she came closer to hitting Gandoma, who was eventually forced to block one of her attacks. Black steam rose from the back of his hand. He had used it to reflect her last swing, but even just touching Durandal caused damage. A holy sword was a devil's weakness, after all. Gandoma stomped on the ground. A large chunk of rock rose between him and Xenovia. He kicked the rock, which launched it at his foe, but Xenovia unleashed a battle cry and cut the rock in half. That was all well and good, but it became clear that he'd only done this to distract her. While she cut the rock, he went after Gasper. When in battle, it is always important to take out the weakest links first, Gandoma said. However, while it was clear that he assumed Gasper was weak because of his appearance, he soon learned otherwise when his body suddenly froze. Gandoma's eyes widened as he tried to move his muscles. However, it was like he'd been frozen in time. That said, Naruto could actually see him struggling, so his high magical resistance was actually trying to help him against Gaspar's forbidden Balor view. "Now, Xenovia," Gaspar said in a strangled voice. "I can't hold him much longer." "Don't worry, Gaspar. I've got this." Xenovia unleashed a massive war cry as she swung Durandal once more, and this time, she unleashed an explosion of power that swept over Gandoma. The man's body might have been hard. He might have had incredible magical resistance. However, against the power of a holy sword like Durandal, he had absolutely no resistance. Gandoma released a loud yell before his body dispersed. The match between Gandoma and Xenovia and Gaspar is over. Xenovia and Gaspar are the winners, while Gandoma has retired. "That was pretty easy," Issei muttered. "I was expecting the battle to last a lot longer." "It was only easy because no one knows how Xenovia fights," Rias said. "Now that they've seen her powers for themselves, Cyrorg and his peerage will be more cautious around her. This is only the opening salvo, and we're going to have to step up our game if we want to keep our winning streak going." "Yes," everyone said in response to her words. The first battle may have been won, but they still had several more battles to go. "Devil Ninja." Xenovia looked up at the camera as the crowd cheered. Xenovia sent everyone a wave while Gaspar hid behind her, and then they both made it back to the transfer circle. The pair vanished from the battlefield and reappeared inside of the Gremory base. "Welcome back, you two." Rias went up to the pair and pulled them both into a hug. "You did a good job." "Thank you, Rias," Xenovia said with an awkward smile. "I'm glad my best was enough," Gaspar added. After Rias let the pair go, Xenovia and Gaspar were congratulated by the rest of their team. Naruto and Issei bumped fists with him. Kiba patted them on the back. Asia clapped her hands in prayer, and Kaneko gave them a thumbs up, while Akano gave her usual, era, "Good job you two," spiel. "What a heart-pounding battle," No exclaimed. "What an upset." Xenovia and Gaspar Vladi dominated the battlefield from start to finish. Do you commentators have anything to say regarding this fight? On the matter of Gandoma being retired so quickly, I think it is from a combination of not knowing his opponent's strength. Dehauser commented. That holy sword was quite the trump card they pulled out. When you combine that with the power of Forbidden Balor view, it's little wonder he didn't stand a chance, especially since they nearly went all out from the beginning. It helps that Gaspar and Xenovia are both strong and incredibly hard workers. Azazel added. Xenovia was always pretty powerful, but Gaspar has been working his butt off to master his sacred gear. I should know since I trained him. The Forbidden Balor view is indeed a sacred gear worthy of a ninja, Degozuru. Azazel and Dehauser stared at Metatron, who stared right back at them with a completely straight face. Naruto, who watched the awkward scene play out, could only facepalm at the Archangel's ridiculousness. Since the battle was over, it was time for Rias and Cyrorg to roll again. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he paid attention to the monitor. Both dice struck the stand at the same time, rolled, and landed on 5 and 6 respectively. Oh ho! It looks like they rolled a total value of 11. This gives both teams a lot more options, No said. As always, you have 5 minutes to select your combatants. Rias turned to her peerage. With a total value of 11, Cyrorg has a lot more options to choose from, and he can choose 2 people. If he decides on using the maximum value he can select Regulus and a knight or a bishop, she said. Do you think he's gonna do that? Asked Kaneko. I do. Rias nodded. His first match was a disastrous mismatch. He'll want to prove that he has what it takes to win and that his servants are no weaker than my own. He also knows that I will be thinking along these lines as well and plan to send one of my strongest servants. You mean, Issei began. That's right. Rias smiled at the young pervert. I am sending out you and Kiba. Your job will be to deal with Regulus. Kiba, I want you to take on whoever else he decides to send out. If he ends up sending out a bishop with strong long-range attacks, then do your best to hold out until Issei can finish off Regulus. Here, Rias winked. That said, don't feel the need to wait for him. If you can finish your opponent first, then all the better. Right. Kiba nodded and placed a hand on his chest. I won't let you down. Me too. Issei cheered. I'm gonna do my best. Everyone wished the pair luck, and then they stepped onto the transfer circle, immediately disappearing from the base and showing up on the battlefield that was viewable on the monitor. Like last time, they weren't alone. This time, Cyborg had chosen 2 people for this match, and just as Rias suspected, Regulus was one of them. Known as the Nemean Lion, Regulus was the spirit residing within the Longinus Regulus Nemea. He appeared to be a young boy with spiky golden hair, golden eyes, and strange markings on his face. Naruto felt an immediate sense of kinship with him. The other person was a knight riding a horse. He was wearing what appeared to be armor worn by knights during the early 1500s in Europe. His horse was also wearing armor like that. Unlike most knights who wielded swords, this one was fiercely gripping a jousting lance. What's more, the horse was emitting bright blue flames from its body. Creepy. So he chose Baruka, Rias said with some misgivings. I think Kiba can defeat him, but he will be at a disadvantage. Who is this Baruka? Asked Naruto. Baruka Furkas, Kaneko answered instead of Rias. He's a knight from the house of Furkas, who are known for their ability to tame horses. I hear he's a pretty strong guy, though I don't know how strong. That's so. Naruto turned back to the monitor just as No was announcing the beginning of the battle. I hope you're all ready because this battle is beginning, now. Naruto wasn't sure how this battle would go, but he knew that Rias planned on having Issei and Kiba take on their opponents separately. However, he didn't think any of them had expected Baruka to charge at Issei. What the shit balls? Issei screamed as he leapt backward just in the nick of time. Baruka's spear impaled the ground he'd been standing on. His speed was nothing to laugh at. Even Naruto felt himself growing shocked by how fast this man was. Boost. The boosted gear's voice echoed across the battlefield, letting everyone know that Issei's strength had doubled, but that hardly meant a thing right now. Baruka was bearing down on Issei with his lance once more. He thrust it out so quickly it was nothing but a blur. Issei dodged in time by twisting his body out of the way, but then the horse bucked forward and slammed into the young pervert with its head. Ugwhack. Boost. Issei endured the attack, but it was clear he was hurting. Even so, he began backpedaling to gain some distance, not that it did him much good. Baruka was way faster than he was. The man kept up the pressure, kept hitting him, and while Issei was a tough guy who could take some punishment, all those attacks would eventually wear him down. Promotion to Knight. Issei quickly promoted himself to Knight, which granted him the speed of a knight, though it was clear from how he was still being pressured that Baruka was far faster than him. Boost. While Issei tried to use his newfound speed to keep up with Baruka, Kiba was doing everything in his power to keep away from Regulus. It wasn't easy. It's just like Master said. Regulus grinned as he swung his foot in a powerful heel drop. Kiba dodged. The ground exploded. He said Rias would send out Issei Hyodo and her remaining knight. That's why he made this plan to defeat you by having Baruka distract Hyodo while I took you out of the picture quickly and then team up on him. Despite the situation, Kiba managed to give his opponent a grin. It's a good strategy, but doesn't it rely on eyes not being able to defeat Baruka more quickly than you can beat me? You are very right, Regulus said with a shrug. It does rely on me beating you before Issei beats Baruka. However, the boosted gear has one major flaw that gives us an advantage. It grants peerless strength, but it requires time to unleash that strength. Even his balance breaker can't be activated at the beginning of a battle. Right now, Hyodo is no more than an average devil with average strength. If I can defeat you before he gains the true power he needs to beat Baruka, then we'll have an advantage when we team up on him 2-1. Boost. Naruto actually thought Cyborg's strategy was pretty damn sound. He knew Rias would choose Issei to battle, just as Rias knew Cyborg would have no choice but to choose Regulus. Both had planned for this. However, Rias had only thought about how to defeat Regulus, not what to do if Regulus and Baruka switched opponents. That was showing now. Kiba tried his best to keep away from Regulus, but then the Nemean lion who resided within the powerful Longinus promoted himself to Rook. While this seemed like an odd promotion to make at first, the reason became clear when Regulus slammed a fist into the ground, creating a massive earthquake. While this affected Issei's and Baruka's battle, it affected Kiba far more. He lost his balance and nearly fell to a knee. Promotion to Knight. Regulus shouted. Oh, no, Rias murmured. Naruto didn't need to know what she was saying that about. With his increased speed, Regulus was on Kiba before the knight could fully recover. Of course, Kiba tried to use his sword birth to keep the pawn from approaching him, But Regulus showed his strength by crashing straight through the massive wall of swords Kiba formed. The wall of swords broke apart and Regulus, now right next to Kiba, promoted himself to queen and struck the princely knight in the chest. Boost. The blow was intense. A massive shockwave spread across the battlefield as Kiba was sent flying back. Not only that, but the attack must have been even more powerful than anyone could have expected because, even before he could hit the ground, Kiba vanished into particles of light. Kiba Yuto has been retired. No exclaimed. What a powerful offense. Regulus defeated Rias Gremory's knight before he could even put up a fight. Rias clenched her fists so tightly her arms shook. The conflict she felt was clear as day on her face. Naruto reached out and grabbed one of her hands. She didn't resist, instead lacing her fingers through his and clutching his hand so hard that it actually kind of hurt. Boost. I should have realized it wouldn't be that easy, Rias said at last. Aiz is powerful, but he has a major weakness. I should have known Cyrorg would capitalize on it. There's nothing we can do now but hope Aiz can pull through, Naruto said. Rias didn't say anything as she stared at the screen with furrowed brows. Boost. Kiba. Issei shouted in shock when the knight vanished. His teeth were gnashed together in anger as he glared at Baruka. Damn you, you annoying horseman. I'm going to blow my load all over your face. The words were actually so unusual and insinuating that not only did the entire crowd go silent, but Baruka actually stopped moving for a second. What? The man said as though he hadn't heard Issei right. Dragon Whip. Before Baruka could move, a whip emerged from Issei's boosted gear and wrapped around the man. It wasn't until he was caught that Baruka tried to escape. However, it just wasn't possible. The boosted gear was the pinnacle of sacred gears, and Issei had been boosting his powers this entire time. Now eat this. Dragon Shot. A sphere appeared in front of the boosted gear, which Issei punched while still holding the whip. A powerful beam launched from the struck sphere of energy. It exploded and washed over Baruka like he was made of tinfoil, engulfing the man in a wave of energy so ferocious that ripples appeared inside the barrier containing the dimension. Naruto almost worried that the dimension would break, but the ripples fortunately dissolved into nothing seconds later. In an incredible display of rage and power, Issei Hyodo has defeated Baruka and his steed with one shot. No announced. What an incredible amount of power. It is no wonder the Red Dragon Emperor is so feared. You mean the Oppai Dragon, Azazel corrected. Oppai Dragon indeed, Degazaru, Metatron added. I also thought he was called the Oppai Dragon, Dehauser suddenly announced. Oh, come on, you three, Issei shouted at the camera, though that was all he could do before Regulus appeared before him. He leapt back as Regulus slammed into the ground, shaking the earth so much that Issei was almost knocked off balance. He took to the skies quickly. Of course, Regulus could have followed him, but just then, Issei let loose with a massive amount of energy that caused the area around him to ripple. Not even the famed Nemean lion was willing to get struck with that. Welsh Dragon. Balance Breaker. Bright red flames engulfed Issei before crimson armor appeared on his body. The armor greatly resembled the scales of a dragon. A pair of massive wings flapped on his back. His feet became encased in tri-tipped clawed boots. A tail grew from his spine. Meanwhile, 5 gems appeared on his body, the chest, back of his hands, and knees. Now clad from head to toe in armor, Issei pointed a finger at Regulus. I hope you're ready because this Red Dragon Emperor is going to kick your ass from here to the moon. Regulus stood on the ground and looked up. Issei floated high above him and looked down. A palpable tension so thick Naruto worried the people watching might choke on it filled the air. The second round of the second match was about to heat up. Chapter 40. Putting it all on the line. Naruto frowned as he stared at the monitor with a hard expression. Issei and Regulus were really going at it. Shockwaves were crashing all over the battlefield, tearing it apart like it was flimsier than soggy ramen noodles. The constant reverberations didn't reach them here in the stadium, but the camera that allowed them to view the battle taking place was constantly breaking in and out, static causing the screen to fuzz every so often. Mode change. Welsh Dragon Invincible Queen. Having promoted himself to queen, Issei quickly transformed his armor into something completely unlike anything Naruto or the others had seen. His body became more streamlined, thinner, and one hand changed into a sword-like appendage, while the other had transformed into what Naruto could only describe as a gun barrel. His tail grew longer and looked more like crystal. Boost. 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 With the power of his balance breaker, Issei boosted himself without limit. As his power increased, he aimed his hand at Regulus and blasted him with an innumerable amount of projectiles. They appeared as basketball-sized bullets. Regulus tried to punch one of them away, but that turned out to be a huge mistake when it exploded in his face, sending him flying backward. He slammed into the ground. The area around him collapsed, forming a massive crater. Issei didn't relent. He kept up a heavy barrage of projectile fire, which constantly pounded into Regulus, who found himself unable to even move. Naruto thought this might be the end for Regulus. There was so much firepower being slammed into that crater, detonating with enough force that the screen shook as shockwaves and powerful ripples spread across the battlefield. Massive gouts of flame went up. The cracks along the ground spread further. It looked like Issei was pouring all of his energy into utterly destroying Regulus. Finally, the constant barrage of firepower ceased, and Issei frowned as he stared into the now dissipating fire. The energy died down. When the area was cleared of dust and smoke, it revealed a massive crater at least 60 meters wide. Regulus was not there. Issei already knew he hadn't killed Regulus since the announcement of Regulus retiring hadn't been made. He looked around but couldn't see anything. It was as if the other pawn had disappeared. "Where do you think Regulus is?" asked Zenobia as she stared at the screen. "I don't know." Akeno frowned, bit her lip, and then shook her head. An attack like that would have defeated anyone else, but the announcement hasn't been made, so Regulus is obviously still alive. My guess is he somehow slipped away from the attack without anyone noticing and is trying to be quiet so Aiz-kun doesn't find him. Maybe he's planning a surprise attack. Either way, let us hope Aiz can counter whatever attack that lion has planned, Ria said in a gay voice. The others nodded. Regulus is still underground, Kaneko said suddenly. Everyone turned to her. Can you sense where Regulus is, Kaneko? Asked Rias. Kaneko nodded, though she said nothing else. Naruto theorized that she was using Sage Mode to feel out where Regulus was. Sage Mode did allow people to sense the ebb and flow of foreign energy. He could have done the same, but since his chakra was constantly being stolen when he entered Sage Mode, he refused to even try. Meanwhile, Issei had landed on the ground and was searching the area. He constantly turned his head left and right. Just then, a crack appeared in the ground beneath him. Issei looked down. The crack grew, and then, quite suddenly, a figure burst from the ground and slammed a powerful fist into the underside of Issei's chin. The attack was so strong his helmet cracked as he was lifted into the air. Next, the figure, who Naruto realized was Regulus, rotated on the balls of his left foot and launched a heel kick at Issei that caused him in the chest while he was falling back down. Regulus' kick must have been powerful, for when his heel met Issei's chest, a shockwave so strong that ground broke apart exploded between them. While Regulus only skidded across the ground, Issei was blasted through the sky. He shot backward so fast he was nothing but a blur. When he slammed into the ground, his body quickly tumbled across the grassy field, tearing out chunks of earth.
Boost, 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 boost. Despite the attack being powerful enough that a crack was running through Issei's balance breaker armor, the young pervert had no intention of giving up. He landed on his feet, skidded across the ground, and dug his hand into the grass until he finally came to a stop. Promotion to Knight. Mode change. Welsh Sonic Boost Knight. The dragon wings jutting from his back spread wide as he launched himself at Regulus.
boosters suddenly appeared on his back, spewing out magical power so dense they appeared as flames. His speed was so quick that he had already surpassed Kiba Yuto at his fastest. Issei was on Regulus within seconds, a sword suddenly shooting from the gauntlet on his left hand. That sword was Ascalon. It was a holy sword given to him by none other than Michael, the archangel and leader of heaven. He swung this heavenly blade at Regulus. The downward slash was fast enough that only a few people like Naruto could follow it. Regulus must have been one of those people. He threw himself to the side as the sword flew down, missing and striking the ground. Despite having promoted himself to knight, the amount of power Issei was packing was nothing to scoff at. The attack was so incredible that the ground in front of him split open, creating a massive chasm that was several dozen meters long and at least 2 meters wide. "I didn't realize eyes had gotten so strong," Rias muttered in shock. "This is a new ability he gained during his time in Kyoto," Naruto said with a small frown. "Normally, he can't activate this power unless he pokes Akino's breasts, but I think his anger over Kiba's loss gave him an extra boost in strength and fueled his determination to get revenge on Kiba's behalf. He normally needs Akino's breasts to activate this power." Rias glanced at Akino, who looked the other way and pretended she didn't notice her king's raised eyebrow. "Issei is a pervert." Kaneko shrugged like everything Naruto said made sense. It's only natural that a pervert would activate his powers in a perverted way. He's a dragon perv bag deluxe. I'm honestly more shocked that he was able to activate his powers without poking Akino's nips like they're a pair of doorbells. "Thanks for that, Kaneko." Akino, for once, said something with an incredibly dry and sarcastic voice. "You're welcome," Kaneko replied like she didn't realize how Akino felt about all this. Back on the screen, the battle had picked up even more. Regulus had promoted himself to knight and was using his speed to avoid Issei's attacks. Sadly, even though Issei was now stronger and faster than Regulus, it was clear that he hadn't trained with this speed very often. He was moving so fast his own reflexes couldn't keep up with him, which allowed his opponent to just barely slip around his attacks. Issei also seemed to realize this. He didn't panic, though. With a flash of inspiration, or perhaps this was something he had planned all along, Issei spun around and attacked with his tail. Regulus was caught off guard, which allowed Issei to wrap his tail around the Longinus spirit's leg, lifted him up, and begin repeatedly slamming him into the ground. Over and over the lion was sent crashing into the already destroyed earth. Cracks formed. Dents appeared. Regulus' body became beaten and bloody. Despite this, the lion spirit sealed within the Longinus didn't give up. He opened his mouth and roared. The roar must have done something to Issei. The boy staggered backward and held a hand to his ears despite them being covered. His tail relaxed around Regulus' leg and allowed the lion to slip free. As he landed on the ground, Regulus pressed both hands into the cratered earth, lifted his legs, and kicked Issei with both feet. A loud boom echoed across the battlefield as Issei was blown off his feet and tumbled across the ground like a rag doll. Regulus didn't let up. He put on an incredible burst of speed, caught up to Issei, and jumped into the air. Before Issei could fully recover, Regulus had landed on top of his chest plate, which shattered beneath the intense assault as the boy was slammed into the ground. Eyes. At the loud shout, everyone turned to Akino, who only now seemed to realize what she was doing and calmed down. Even so, her fists were trembling with emotion as she stared at the screen. While the attack had clearly done some serious damage, Issei refused to give in and grabbed onto Regulus' legs. The lion spirit struggled to escape. However, just before he could really put up a fight, a powerful surge of energy shot through his body. Flames lit up his legs as if he had suddenly stepped into a pit of lava. Regulus' roar of pain was so agonized that even the audience was flinching sympathetically. Then Regulus' legs vanished. It was hard to describe what happened. Naruto could only think of it as Regulus' legs being burned to ash by Issei's power. It was like they had disintegrated. Regulus fell to the ground with a loud thump, and then Issei raised both of his legs and slammed them onto the human-shaped lion's chest in powerful double heel drop. Regulus slammed into the ground. His body became battered and broken. His shoulder where Issei's heel slammed into him had clearly shattered. His arms and legs were bent at an awkward angle. He was lying in a crater shaped like his body. He looked defeated. Naruto expected this to end the fight, but then something appeared in Regulus' hand. Phoenix tears. He uncapped the lid and poured a single drop onto his body, which began healing near instantly. His legs regrew, his cuts and bruises healed. It was as if all the damage done to him had been done to someone else. "We should have given Ice Phoenix tears," Naruto remarked suddenly. Rias grimaced. "I didn't think we'd need to use them so early in the game. I should have known better." Issei and Regulus scrambled to their feet. However, there was a clear difference between the two now. Regulus looked ready and raring to go, while Issei was breathing heavily, shoulders and chest heaving. Despite this, there was no outward signs of damage to Issei. Boost. 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 The battle renewed. Issei continued boosting himself as he attacked Regulus. With his power doubling second after second, it was clear that he had a distinct advantage despite being tired and Regulus using Phoenix Tears to heal himself. This battle is shaping up to be an incredibly exciting match. No exclaimed as shockwaves and distortions appeared all over the battlefield. Issei has a clear and distinct power advantage, which you can see in how he's doing most of the attacking, Azazel determined. Regulus is trying to conserve his power because he knows he isn't going to get more than one shot at ending this. Of course, if he waits too long, the battle will end whether he wants it to or not. All Issei needs is one lucky hit. However, it's also clear that Issei isn't as good a fighter as Regulus, D'Hauser countered. All he's got right now is raw power. I'm not sure that will be enough to defeat someone of Regulus' caliber. Neither of these two act anything like a ninja, Dagozuru. At Metatron's random comment, Azazel and D'Hauser both shook their heads in consternation. Tension hung over the crowd as the battle suddenly picked up the pace, with magic power, long-range attacks, and explosions filling the battlefield. Everyone could tell the battle was coming to an end. Naruto, despite looking calm outwardly, was biting his figurative nails as he watched. The ending soon came. Issei raced forward and punched at Regulus, though the attack was dodged. It was just a feint anyway. Not even a second later, Issei thrust Ascalon through Regulus' chest. However, at the same time, Regulus launched a surprise attack of his own. His hand speared through Issei's shoulder, striking the area that wasn't protected by armor, shearing it right off. Blood sprayed from Issei's missing shoulder as Regulus disappeared into light particles. Issei howled in pain as he held a hand to the stump where his arm had been. Regulus has been retired. The battle is won. Victory goes to Team Gremory. Aiz-san. Almost before the announcement had been made, Asia and Akeno raced onto the battlefield without warning. They appeared next to Issei as he knelt on the ground. Akeno grabbed the removed limb and held it up to Issei's shoulder as Asia used Twilight Healing to fix it. "Is that allowed?" Naruto asked Rias, who sighed. No, it isn't." "Oh." Despite hearing this, Naruto was still smiling. "That kind of sucks, but at least we learned something good." "Which is?" Rias asked. Despite not being in a relationship with him anymore, Akeno clearly still cares for Aiz, Naruto said, his smile widening. Devil Ninja, it went without saying, but because Asia and Akeno technically interfered with Issei's battle, he was still on the battlefield, he was automatically disqualified. At present, the young man was sitting on a chair inside of the Gremory team base. Akeno was no longer by his side and instead standing next to Rias. Naruto thought she was embarrassed by what happened, but Asia was sticking close to Issei and looked incredibly worried. It was like she expected his arm to suddenly fall off all over again. "That was an exciting match," No exclaimed. "While I think we can technically say it ended in a draw since both teams lost both of their servants, Issei's incredible display of power was undeniably the highlight." "I'll admit that Issei Hyodo showed incredible strength," D'Hauser said. "While it is clear that he's not as well versed in combat as Regulus, it is equally clear that he outclasses Regulus in terms of sheer power and potential." As the commentators began speaking, Naruto ran a hand through his hair as he thought about what Issei's disqualification meant. He was going to be Rias' trump card for this rating game. However, now that Issei was no longer able to fight, It meant their fighting strength had been cut, and unless she planned on sending him out, they might find themselves outmatched by Cyrorg's servants. Of course, there was also Cyrorg himself to deal with.
I am sorry, Rias, Akino said with a slight bow at the waist. I do not know what came over me.
I do, but don't worry about it. Rias waved her hand as if warding away a persistent fly that kept landing on her face. She smiled at her best friend. While losing eyes is a blow to our fighting strength, it's not like our victory is reliant upon him. All of my servants are amazing, and I'm sure none of them will lose out to the members of Cyrorg's peerage. Even though Rias expressed the utmost confidence, Naruto knew that Issei's disqualification hurt her chances of winning without relying on his strength. Now she might have to use him if she wanted to pull out a win. At that moment, No's voice caught their attention. It's time to see who the next combatants will be. Kings, roll your dice. Rias picked up the dice and rolled it. Naruto paid more attention to the screen as it showed both dice being rolled at the same time. It looks like Rias Gremory has rolled a 6, while Cyrorg has rolled a 3. That means the total value for this match is 9. No exclaimed. I wonder who these two will choose. Akeno, I'm sending you out next, Rias said as she handed Akeno a vial of Phoenix Tears. I'm not sure who Cyrorg plans to send out. With a total value of 9, he can send out pretty much any combination we can think of among his knights, rooks, and bishops, or he can send out his queen. If he sends out 2 servants, defeat the strongest one first with your most powerful attacks and the weaker one second. Ufufu, you can't count on me, Rias, Akeno said. I will make Cyrorg and his team pay for what happened to Ice-kun. No one said anything to Akeno's words, especially because what happened to Issei was technically hers and Asia's fault. No one wanted to step on that landmine. When Akeno was transported onto the battlefield, so were 2 people from Cyrorg's side. The smaller of the 2 was a young boy with light green hair, violet eyes, and 2 identical hair ornaments on each side of his head. The other servant was an attractive woman with long, wavy blonde hair and red eyes. She wore a business suit. Naruto thought she looked like a flight attendant. It looks like Rias Gremory has sent out her queen. Meanwhile, Cyrorg sent out Coriana Andrielphus and Mistita Sabnok, No said before turning to the 3 commentators. What can you 3 tell us about these combatants? Nothing, de Gazaru, Metatron announced without shame. I can tell you about Akeno, Azazel said with a sigh at Metatron. Akeno is a half-devil, half-fallen angel hybrid and the daughter of Barakiel. As such, she controls a lot of power and is even on par with Rias Gremory herself in terms of sheer power if not destructive talent. As a queen, all aspects of her are enhanced from her physical abilities to magic, but where she really shines is definitely magic. In particular, she specializes in a brand of lightning called Holy Lightning, which is an ability she gained from her fallen angel blood. Mistita and Coriana are both members from one of the extinct families of the 72 Pillars, Dehauser announced. Their powers are quite impressive. Mistita is a devil with human heritage, and because of his human side, he was able to possess the sacred gear, Trick Vanish. This sacred gear has the ability to seal an opponent's ability for a certain amount of time, though it comes at the expense of using a large amount of the sacred gear holder's stamina. As a bishop, Coriana Zero has a high amount of power and is incredibly talented in all categories of demonic magic. As he spoke about their powers, Dehauser paused for a moment to catch his breath. This is actually a pretty good combination. Both are bishops who rely on long-range attacks, so they are good at keeping their distance. If Mistita can seal Akeno's abilities, then Coriana can hit her with a powerful magical barrage. It sounds like this is going to be an exciting match. In that case, let the battle begin, No exclaimed. With the battle now starting, Akeno didn't waste any time in generating massive amounts of holy lightning. However, just as she was going to unleash a powerful explosion of it at Coriana, who she deemed a bigger threat, Mistita activated his sacred gear. The lightning being generated in Akeno's hands dispersed. Era. That isn't good. Akeno placed her hands to her cheeks. At that moment, Coriana unleashed a powerful ball of fire that shot toward Akeno like a bullet. The fireball was at last taller than Akeno was. However, despite an attack of this magnitude being launched right off the bat, Akeno didn't panic. Her wings spread out from behind her and she took to the sky. It seemed Mistida's sacred gear only had the ability to temporarily seal one ability at a time, so her other magics were left open to her. Normal lightning shot from her hand and struck a barrier that Koryana erected to protect Mistida. In return, the blonde bishop from Saraorg's peerage created numerous ice lances that were launched at Akeno with the intention of skewering her. As Akeno dodged through the air and used lightning to blast several lances out of the sky, Kaneko said, "It looks like Akeno is in a pinch. That Mistida kid might not be as strong as Koryana, but his sacred gear makes him a lot more troublesome." It doesn't help that Koryana can erect powerful barriers, Rias also added as she observed her friend and Koryana trading numerous attacks. If she could use her holy lightning, she'd be able to break those barriers in a single hit, but if she wants to break Koryana's barriers now, then she needs to overload them with a barrage of spells. That takes too much time, though. Koryana will counter with her own magic before Akeno can launch enough spells. Fortunately, Koryana isn't anywhere close to being as strong as Akeno. Akeno and Koryana were continuing to trade magic attacks, while down below, Mistida began unleashing a few magical attacks as well. He didn't have Koryana's talent, but several fire arrows flew from the magic circles he projected. Despite being attacked from two sides, Akeno was fending them off easily enough. A barrier appeared around her body and the attack appeared to bounce off harmlessly. That was what it seemed like at first. However, as the double assault continued, Koryana fired off a set of icicles that finally broke through Akeno's barrier and punctured her left leg, right arm, and stomach. "Akeno-sama," Issei shouted as he stood up. "Ah, Aiz-san, you can't leave. If you do, Akeno-sama will be disqualified," Asia said. Despite her words, Issei looked like he wanted nothing more than to travel onto the battlefield and help Akeno, but he soon settled down by taking several deep breaths. Releasing an intense sigh, he sat down. "I know," he said to Asia. "Sorry, I lost my head for a moment." "Don't worry about Akeno," Rias said. "I gave her those phoenix tears for a reason." As if Rias had prophetic powers, Akeno brought out the phoenix tears that Rias had given her and used them. The wounds on her body quickly healed over. "Yufufufu. It seems the power of Mistida-kun's sacred gear has finally worn off. Allow me to repay you both for keeping me so entertained." Lightning crackled within her hands, but this lightning was different from what she had been firing off until this point. It was almost pure white. Even someone who had never seen it before would probably recognize what it was. The holy lightning leapt from Akeno's hands and slammed into the shield that Koryana hastily erected. Unfortunately for Koryana, holy lightning was many times stronger than normal lightning, and it also possessed the light attribute of the angels, making it many times more deadly to devils. Koryana's barrier shattered and the holy lightning struck the woman who erected it. A loud scream tore from her throat as her body was fried by both lightning and light. Her screams were enough to make everyone in the audience shudder. "What's that? You want more?" Akeno was smiling like a sadist as she looked down at Koryana. "Ufu-fu-fu, okay, if you insist." Akeno increased the power of her lightning bolts, which honestly didn't do anything except hurt Koryana even more. In fact, Naruto was pretty sure Koryana was already beaten. Koryana has retired, and just like that, the announcement that Koryana had retired was made. Nobody could actually see what had happened when she was engulfed by Akeno's lightning. However, as Akeno relented on her barrage, the gaping crater filled with scorch marks where Koryana had been standing was revealed. "What an insane amount of power!" No shouted. "So this is the famed holy lightning of Barakiel." Ufufufu. Giggling like a love-struck schoolgirl, Akeno turned toward Mistida, who was pale and shaking. She placed a hand on her cheek and licked her lips. There was a large blush on her face. She looked hornier than Rias did after watching the midnight marathon of hentai. "I believe you are next." Akeno raised her hand, lightning crackling within it, arcing out as though trying to spring free. However, just before she could release it, Cyborg's voice echoed from his base. "Mistida forfeits this match. I'd rather not lose my last bishop the way I lost Koryana." As Cyborg finished speaking, the crowd became incredibly silent. However, all this meant was that it became easier for No to announce the victor. Cyborg has forfeit this match, which means that the victory goes to Akeno. Team Gremory has won this match. Devil Ninja. Akeno returned to the base after her victory was announced. She wore a beaming smile and a big blush. Her shoulders and chest were heaving like she was excited about something and, knowing about her sadistic personality as they did, everyone was aware of how aroused the girl probably felt right now. Oofufufu, what an exhilarating battle, she said with a content sigh like she just came in her pants. Sometimes, you scare me, senpai, Kaneko muttered with a strange look, but good job. You really kicked some ass, Issei added. You were so cool, Akeno-sama. Asia threw more fuel into the fire. As praises were heaped on her, the blush on Akeno's face suddenly became embarrassed instead of sadistic and sexual. While Akeno tentatively accepted Asia's and Issei's praise, Rias mentally prepared herself for the next battle by taking several deep breaths. Naruto noticed what she was doing and walked over to her. He didn't say anything. He waited for her to notice him. We were very lucky that my guessing Cyborg would send out 2 of his lower-ranked servants instead of his queen was correct. I somehow don't think we'll be as lucky next time. Nodding along with her, Naruto quickly ran through the matches thus far. Including Mistita and Coriana, we've also defeated Gandoma, Baruka, and Regulus. Who does that leave on Cyborg's side? Aside from Cyborg himself, there is also Kusha Abaddon, his queen, the knight, Liban Crisel, and Ladora Bune. A rook like Gandoma, Rias answered. As they were speaking, Kaneko wandered up to the pair and stood in front of Naruto. Her cat ears were twitching and her tail curled around his leg. Recognizing the obvious desire for affection, Naruto placed a hand on her head and began rubbing her hair. Kaneko didn't say anything. However, a purr unwittingly rose from her throat as she leaned into his hand. Rias shook her head and smiled. So Cyborg has 4 pieces. 3 if we don't include Seirog himself. Meanwhile, we have you, me, Xenovia, Gasper, Kaneko, Roswise, and Akeno. That's 6 to his 4. I'd say we're doing good so far, Naruto said. Yes. Though it's a shame Aiz was disqualified, we're still doing an excellent job, Rias agreed. While Naruto and Rias had been speaking, No had been commenting on the battle alongside Azazel, Dehauser, and Metatron. Naruto hadn't been paying too much attention, but Azazel was talking about Akeno's extremely powerful attack. However, it seemed the conversation was now winding to a close. Alright, kings, it's time to roll the dice and see who can be sent out to battle next, No said. Also, we have decided to add a special rule for this round to spice things up. Because 3 people battled in the last match, we have decided to add a value of 3 to the total value rolled. That means if Rias Gremory and Cyborg Biel roll a total of 6, then the total value will become 9. The 2 rolled again. Rias rolled a 6. Cyborg also rolled a 6. This is unbelievable. 2 6s have been rolled for a total number of 12, and adding the value of 3 we decided on. That means they now have a total value of 15. No shouted with excitement. That means the conditions for both Rias Gremory and Cyborg Biel to take center stage have been met, however, whether or not they should do this remains to be seen. Everyone, huddle up, Rias called. Asia, Akeno, Issei, Kaneko, Gasper, Xenovia, and Naruto stood in a circle with Rias, who suddenly appeared even more serious than before. A sense of tension hung over their group. Of course, it wasn't like Naruto didn't understand why everyone was so tense. We now have a problem, Rias said. We need to make a decision on who to send, and we need to think about whether or not Cyborg will send himself out or someone else. If he decides to send out himself, then we'll need to send out Naruto, Kaneko said immediately. He's the only one strong enough to fight against that monster. Anyone else would just lose. Rias nodded. I agree. Even I'm no match for Cyborg. However, I also don't like the idea of using Naruto to fight since this won't allow me to display the talent all of you have worked so hard to attain. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Naruto could practically see her thought process as she considered all their available options. With a total value of 15, we can send out 2 or even 3 people. This includes Akeno and someone whose value equals 5 or 2 people who equal 3, meaning we can send out Xenovia, Gasper, or even Roswise. I think you should let me go out again. Akeno voiced her thoughts. Let's say he decides not to come out himself. In that case, Cyborg is likely to send out his queen and his knight. I think sending out a bishop to keep the knight at bay and me to deal with his queen would be a good idea. Rias closed her eyes. Her pupils flickered behind her eyelids. Everyone else waited on bated breath to see what she would say. "Yeah. Okay. Let's go with that," Rias said. "Akano, Roswise, I'm sending you two out to fight. Please leave everything to us," Roswise said. She hadn't spoken much since the raiding game began, but now she looked eager to prove her worth as a member of their team. The two ladies stepped into the transfer circle and were teleported to the battlefield. At the same time, someone else appeared on the battlefield several meters away. Rias gasped in shock when she saw who it was, and Naruto could only groan as they realized their mistake too late. Cyborg Biel had taken the field. "I don't believe it, I cannot believe it," No shouted at the top of his lungs. Cyborg Biel himself has decided to take part in this match. Is this a sign that he's become upset at his losses? Has he decided to do the job of decimating Team Gremory himself? What do the commentators have to say about this? De Gazaru, "It seems like this is going to be a tough match for Team Gremory," was all Metatron said. "I'm pretty sure Cyborg decided to go out himself because of the significant losses he's taken," Azazel replied. "He's lost several of his pieces, including his trump card Regulus, and even though Issei was disqualified during that match because of outside interference, his team has still taken more overall losses than Team Gremory. Right now the only way for him to guarantee victory is to use an overwhelming amount of force." "That is about right," Dehauser added. "I never could have imagined Team Gremory would put up such a fierce fight, but it's clear that they are a good match for Cyborg and his peerage despite not being as experienced with raiding games." "You heard it, folks," No began. "If Cyborg wants to put the hurt on Team Gremory, he's gonna have to do some serious damage, and with that said, let's get this match underway." Akano and Roswise began fighting the moment the match started. Roswise shot into the air as several dozen magic circles appeared around her, rotating at incredibly high speeds. The magic circles weren't standard devil magic. They were Norse magic circles. Several giant infernos blasted from the magic circles. They were literal torrents of flame that spewed out and agglomerated together, forming a massive tornado of fire that bore down on Cyborg. Adding more fuel to this fire, several of the magic circles Roswise created shot out wind, which slammed into the conflagration and fueled the fire, increasing the size and potency so much that the flames went from red to blue. The attack engulfed Cyborg, slammed into the ground, and exploded with a force so incredible that the screens fuzzed out for a moment. When they cleared, all that remained of the area Roswise's attack had struck was a massive crater several dozen meters across and who knew how many deep. The cameras couldn't get a good angle, so Naruto and the others couldn't see if Cyborg had survived that. "However, that isn't enough to kill Cyborg," Naruto suddenly said. As if his words were prophetic, a figure leapt from the crater. It was Cyborg. Not only was he alive, but there were only a few burn marks on his body to show he'd been hit by Roswise's flames. The fact that he'd survived was bad enough. However, the fact that he hadn't been terribly injured by Roswise was pretty depressing. Even Naruto would have suffered serious injuries from an attack of that caliber. "What the hell is this guy made of?" Naruto squawked. "That would have killed me if I didn't use something like Sage Mode or my Chakra Shroud to protect me." "That's the Tuki we told you about," Rias explained to him. "The first thing you have to understand is that Cyborg's durability is unlike anything else. Because he didn't inherit the Bale's power of destruction, he trained his body to the extreme. On top of that, the years of intense training allowed him to further strengthen himself using Tuki." As Rias spoke, Cyborg had ascended high into the air and was coming down on top of Roswise, who quickly tried to pull back. The man punched at her despite being several meters away. A shockwave blasted from his fist, one so powerful that even just nicking Roswise's wings sent the woman into an uncontrolled tailspin. Before she could slam into the ground, Roswise created several magic circles underneath her, which cushioned her fall and kept her from being retired from the game. At the same time, Akano blasted Cyborg with a powerful surge of holy lightning. The incredible attack was so bright that it blinded the viewers, who were forced to shut their eyes. Naruto didn't shut his eyes, instead narrowing them as he stared at the monitor. Cyborg had taken to the skies like Akano and Roswise. He was trying to close the distance between them, but the two were doing everything in their power to keep that from happening. Magic circles flared to life. Icicles, lightning, fire, and wind exploded from these circles and struck Cyborg. Meanwhile, Akano continued firing off bursts of holy lightning. Rosweiss's attacks didn't do much damage. Most of her spells shattered against Cyrorg's incredibly durable body. However, the holy lightning from Akano was something that seemed to hurt. He had a small burn on his arm from where her attack had struck him, and it was even bleeding. Despite this, it was also clear that her attack wasn't doing much. As she sent another blast at Cyrorg, he punched her holy lightning away. "This is not good," Kaneko muttered. Even with their powers combined, those two are having a hard time just keeping Cyrorg at bay. As Kaneko said this, Cyrorg punched the air in front of him, creating a powerful shockwave that slammed into Akano before she could dodge. Akano screamed in pain as her clothing was torn apart despite being specially made to resist damage. A large bruise appeared on her stomach as she was blasted backward. Cyrorg tried to close the distance between them. However, Rosweiss intercepted him with several more magic circles, which surrounded him and unleashed a powerful detonation from all sides. Smoke poured from the blast area in the sky as a figure fell out, trailed by black wisps. This figure was Cyrorg. At first, it looked like Cyrorg had been injured, but then the man flipped around and landed on the ground, cracking the area underneath his feet. He stood up. Smoke was still pouring from his body, but it was clear that he had not suffered a single injury. Narrowing his eyes, Cyrorg bent his knees and suddenly blasted off the ground. This time, his speed was such that even Naruto had trouble keeping up with him. The blur slammed into Rosweiss with enough force to shatter her armor and send her flying. As she flew through the air, her body suddenly disappeared. Rosweiss has been retired. Akano gritted her teeth in frustration as she sent more holy lightning at Cyrorg and even mixed in icicles and other types of magic. But the man she was fighting proved his strength by pulverizing her attacks with his bare fists. Before she even had time to launch another attack, a shockwave produced by Cyrorg kicking the air in front of him smacked her in the face. As she fell down, her opponent appeared underneath her and slammed his fist into her back. An agonized cry echoed from the speakers before Akino's body went limp. Just as this happened, Akano Himejima disappeared. Akano has been retired. Victory goes to Cyrorg Biel. Devil Ninja, Rias was grimacing as Naruto studied her. She had obviously realized her mistake in sending out Akano and Rosweiss. The two of them were extraordinarily powerful, but against a man who had been hailed as the strongest youth, their powers were indeed lacking. There was no way to know Cyrorg would go out there himself. Naruto tried to reassure her. "Maybe not, but I feel like I should have realized he would after what happened," Rias muttered bitterly. Cyrorg lost so many pieces already, including Regulus. If he had sent out anyone else, there was no guarantee he would win, and it's important to whittle down the competition so he doesn't overexert his forces. It was obvious he would go out himself when I think about it like that. Hindsight is always 20/20, Naruto said. Yeah, well, right now I wish it wasn't. Naruto did not let Rias' grumbling upset him because he knew what kind of person she was. Rias always took her failings personally. Every time something happened that caught her by surprise, every time she found herself not living up to her own expectations, she believed it was a personal failing on her part, that she wasn't good enough. This was also why she was also so hard on herself at times. While Naruto was trying to comfort Rias, No was speaking with Azazel, Dehauser, and Metatron. What an exciting match. I think I can see now why Cyrorg is called the strongest youth, No was saying. Cyrorg's power is on a completely different level from normal high-ranked devils, Dehauser explained. This is because other devils are born with their power. They don't train to acquire power since their power increases naturally over time. Cyrorg is different. He's trained himself to the breaking point, and by doing so, he has gained a power that no devil his age could possibly compete with. While I wouldn't be so sure about Cyrorg not having any equal among the younger generation, I do recognize his strength. Azazel added his 2 cents. The young man has clearly worked himself to the bone to acquire the strength he has now. Ninja Sama will beat him, de Gazaru, Metatron said. Are you sure an angel should be saying that? Asked No before he coughed into his hand. Since this match has ended, it is time to get ready for the next round. Kings, roll the dice. Once again, the 2 kings rolled the dice. Rias Grimori has rolled a 4 and Cyrorg Bale rolled a 3. This means they have a total value of 7, No announced as the dice flashed on the screen. I wonder who they will choose this time. With a total value of 7, Their options were limited to either one servant with a value of 5 of 5, in other words, a rook, or two servants whose total value when combined equaled 6 like the knight and bishop. Of the knights, only Zenobia was left. For the bishops, there was Gasper. Kaneko was the last remaining rook. "Kaneko, I want you to go up," Ria said. "There are only two servants Cyrorg can choose now. Libin and Ladora. If he chooses Libin, try to lure him in and trap him so he can't use his speed. If he uses Ladora, then just do what you always do." "You can count on me," Kaneko said before she turned to Naruto, who didn't even have time to wonder what she was doing before she grabbed his jacket, yanked him down, and placed a kiss on his open mouth. Her tongue quickly penetrated his mouth and swirled around inside. The kiss was intense enough that Naruto almost forgot himself. However, Kaneko released her grip on him before he could kiss back. That was for luck. Also, we're having sex when this rating game is over. Naruto honestly couldn't think of anything to say. However, he recognized that Kaneko was getting more demanding lately. He wondered if something happened to warrant her sudden needy attitude, but then he wondered if maybe this was a part of puberty. Did Nekusho get super horny and demanding when they went through puberty? I'm gonna have to ask Kuroka about this. In either event, Naruto decided not to focus on Kaneko's weirdly demanding attitude. He looked at the screen as two people appeared. The first was obvious Kaneko, but the second was a tall and lanky man who appeared a bit older than the average devil did. He had green hair and red eyes. His clothing consisted of what seemed to be leather armor. The one Cyrorg Biel sent is Ladora Bune, a rook from the extinct House of Bune. This once legendary house was known for their ability to tame dragons. I wonder if we'll see that ability put on display here, No said excitedly. The other servant sent out his Kaneko to Zhu. She's a Nekosho, devil hybrid who is rumored to have mastered Sage Mode, a dangerous ability that grants someone incredible powers in exchange for taking on the world's hatred. A while ago, Naruto was sure those words would have made Kaneko flinch, but she had long since mastered her ability to use Sage Mode. Even though Naruto could no longer use it, he had been teaching her everything he could, helping her along. She had gained a lot of strength. What's more, she had several surprises up her sleeve. Kaneko cracked her knuckles while Ladora sneered and crossed his arms as if he couldn't be bothered by this fight. This would have pissed off a lot of people. Not Kaneko. She merely adopted an orthodox fighting stance and got ready. A countdown was announced, and then the fight commenced. Blasting off her feet at a speed most rooks normally couldn't reach, Kaneko launched herself at Ladora, who seemed shocked by the speed and was forced to jump back. Kaneko's foot sliced through the air in front of him. Her reverse heel kick was so powerful that a shockwave erupted from her small body. It wasn't on the same level as Cyrorg's shockwaves, but it was strong enough that Ladora stumbled back a few steps. Kaneko proved her fighting prowess by not letting her single miss deter her. She leapt into the air. While ascending into the sky, she activated her own unique Sage Mode, typically known as Senjutsu, and white-hot power appeared on her hands. She blasted several flares at Ladora, who had been trying to leap back. Now he was forced to move again unless he was willing to test her power, and when he saw the explosions her Senjutsu attacks caused, it was clear he wasn't willing to do that. Spinning around as she descended, Kaneko attacked Ladora with a fierce heel drop. Her opponent raised his arms and crossed them to block her attack. An explosion of power erupted from Kaneko's small body. The ground beneath Ladora cracked as the Senjutsu energy released by Kaneko's heel drop slammed into him with an incredible amount of force. His knees buckled, his teeth were grit, but he roared out and used all of his strength to push the girl off. As Kaneko landed on her feet, Ladora huffed and puffed as he tried to regain his breath. "You are a lot stronger than I gave you credit for," Ladora said. Kaneko didn't say anything, but she did stick out her hand and give him the victory sign. "It seems I'm gonna need to take this a lot more seriously than I first expected," Ladora sighed. "Fine, you asked for it." Ladora released what sounded like an angry scream. As he did, power poured off the man in waves. These ripples of power rushed over the surroundings and struck Kaneko, sending her hair flying everywhere. Despite being hit by such power, Kaneko didn't even flinch as she slid her feet across the ground, adopting a wider combat stance. She took a deep breath, and then released a wellspring of power. Ripples appeared around her as energy wafted off her body. The energy she was releasing became so dense it looked like an ethereal flame was covering her. "Since when has she been able to learn how to use Tuki?" asked a shocked Rias. "Heh. Kaneko and me were keeping it a secret from you," Naruto said as he puffed out his chest. "Are you surprised?" "Very," Rias admitted. Down below, Lidora's body was cracking and growing larger. It looked like his skin was ripping and revealing a monster that was hidden underneath. He grew bigger and bigger, and his form looked less human with every second that passed. Soon, what stood before Kaneko was not a man or a devil, but a dragon. Said dragon opened its mouth and released a powerful breath of flame, which spewed forth and tried to burn Kaneko to a crisp. Kaneko had no intention of letting herself be defeated just like that, however, and she did the only thing she could. She punched it. The flames were met with an explosion of power that caused them to disperse. Kaneko then leapt into the air and nailed the dragon with a kick to its jaw. Several scales cracked and its teeth broke. Chips flew out of its mouth as the dragon reared its head back, but Kaneko wasn't done. After landing on the ground, she leapt at the dragon again and struck its exposed belly with a powerful 1-2 hit combination. Lidora opened his mouth, but all he did was spew out blood instead of fire. Kaneko slammed her fist into him again. His entire body shook. He vomited even more blood. Despite being so injured, he tried his best to attack Kaneko, but she didn't let that happen. She leapt over his tail swipe, then came back down and heel stomped his tail. Her senjutsu energy ran through his body. It caused even more damage that was invisible to the naked eye. Roaring in anger, Lidora tried to squash Kaneko flat when the girl landed back on the ground. He raised his front paw and smashed it on top of her. While the ground underneath him cratered, no announcement was made, and the reason why soon became apparent. Kaneko was holding the dragon's foot up, keeping it from squashing her like a pancake. She looked a little strained. However, with her strength enhanced by her Tuki, Kaneko was more than able to throw his foot off. Lidora tried to swipe at her, but again, Kaneko leapt over the ponderous attack, landed on his outstretched hand this time, and ran up it. She leapt off his limb, spun around, and kicked him in the neck. The attack sent a burst of energy through Lidora, who shuddered like he was having muscle spasms. As Kaneko landed on the ground, Lidora swayed back and forth before falling forward. His heavy body hit the floor with a loud crash. Soon, Lidora vanished into particles. Lidora has been retired. Victory goes to Kaneko. Walking back to the transfer circle to the cheering of the crowd, Kaneko reappeared inside of the Gremory team base and gave them the peace sign. "Suck it," she said. Everyone crowded around Kaneko and congratulated her on her victory. Xenovia asked to spar some time. Gasper had stars in his eyes as he said she was like a hero. Issei and Asia told her she was amazing. And Rias gave her a big hug. Kaneko accepted all of the congratulatory praise with a very small smile. However, after they parted to make room for her, she looked at Naruto with expectations clear in her eyes. "You did amazing, Kaneko. I kicked ass, right? You kicked major ass. That means I deserve a reward, doesn't it?" I suppose it does." Naruto knelt before Kaneko, placed his hands on either side of her face, and swept her into a kiss. Kaneko responded immediately. She wrapped her arms around him and pressed her body against his. The kiss was not chaste, but it didn't have tongue either. Despite this, Kaneko's tail was wagging back and forth like a puppy's, and her cat ears were twitching. "That was an exciting match," No said. "I never expected someone other than the Oppai Dragon and Naruto Uzumaki to be so strong." "Kaneko is a special case, DxD, Metatron said as he crossed his arms. "She has been personally trained in the art of senjutsu by none other than Ninja-sama. The two of them often work in secret and no one knows what sort of training they undertake, just like a good ninja, DxD. Is that so? Well, if she's been personally trained by that Naruto Uzumaki, then I guess her strength makes sense if all the rumors concerning him are true," said No. "They are," Metatron confirmed. "All of them? All of them? Even the one about him having a harem of 100 women? That one is an exception." The conversation soon ended and No announced that it was time for the kings to roll again. As Rias and Cyborg rolled their dice, Naruto thought about how many more people they could send out. Cyborg only had 2 more besides himself. Kusha and Liban. A knight and a queen. If they rolled a 12, he could choose to send out them both if he decided not to send out himself. He didn't think Cyborg would send himself out a second time as it would damage his reputation, but who knew what would happen. It's A12. They rolled a 12, No announced to the crowd. Rias turned to look at everyone. I don't think Cyborg will send himself out twice, but I also don't want to take the risk that he won't. Gasper, Xenovia, and Naruto. I'm sending out all three of you. If Cyborg comes out himself, then I'll be relying on you to take care of him, Naruto, but if he doesn't, then I want you to deal with Kusha. She's a very powerful queen. Let Gasper and Xenovia take out Libin. Got it, Naruto said. I'll do my best not to let you down, Xenovia said as well. I'll try my hardest too, Gasper also said. I'm counting on you three, Rias told them with a smile. With those parting words, the three servants stepped onto the transfer circle and were teleported to the battlefield. The second to last match had begun, Devil Ninja. Naruto could admit, if only to himself, that he was excited about finally being allowed to fight. Everyone else had a chance to show off, but he had been held back. He understood why. If Rias relied on him, then everyone would say she couldn't win her battles without him. However, even though he understood that, he wouldn't lie and say not being used in a raiding game wasn't boring. He looked around the battlefield. It looked like the plane they were fighting on got repaired every time a battle ended. Despite having been annihilated in the previous bouts between Kaneko and Ladora, and then before with the Kano and Rossweiss versus Cyborg, nothing looked out of place now. He really wondered what kind of magic did that. With him were Gasper and Xenovia. He didn't know much about Xenovia except that she was a strong warrior formerly from the church, but he knew Gasper's abilities well, having helped him train. On the other side were two individuals he knew but was never formally introduced to. The first person was a beautiful young woman with blonde hair tied into a ponytail and blue eyes. Her striped blue pants and sleeveless shirt was fairly tight and displayed a gap near her chest. Sleeves were attached to her arms but didn't connect to the shirt. She was wearing heels, which Naruto thought was odd since they didn't look comfortable, but he knew plenty of girls who kicked ass in heels, so he didn't say anything. Beside her was a man who was every bit as Bishonen as Kiba. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. Unlike Kiba, who had short hair, this guy's hair was long and stopped around the middle of his back. His sharp features were accentuated by shoulder pads, a chest plate, gauntlets, and leaf plates to protect his hips. He looked very knightly was all Naruto could say about him. It's the second to last match, and it looks like this battle is 3-on-2, No shouted. Gasper Vladi, Xenovia, and Naruto Uzumaki are facing off against Kusha Abaddon from the House of Abaddon and Libin Crysel from the extinct House of Crysel. I wonder how this battle will go. Is there anything you three would like to say before the match starts? Ninja-sama will win, Metatron said immediately. Even without some of his extra powers like Sage Mode, Ninja-sama has some incredibly powerful abilities, including unique ninjutsu and taijutsu. He's also very sneaky, Dagazaru. As a ninja should be. By this point, No seemed very well versed in Metatron's eccentricities and decided to ignore the man in favor of Azazel and Dehauser. This battle is definitely going to be tough for Kusha and Libin, Azazel said. I don't want to say much, but Naruto is easily one of the strongest people I know, and I don't mean among the younger generation. I mean in general. He defeated Kokabiel, Loki, and even fought against the most important gods of the Greek pantheon. You don't go into battles like that and survive without being insanely strong. I've never seen Naruto Uzumaki in combat, but I've heard plenty, Dehauser added. That said, just because he is strong doesn't mean he's invincible. You do well not to underestimate Kusha or Libin. Both of them are incredibly skilled and versatile servants. Kusha is especially talented. It sounds like this is going to be an interesting match, No exclaimed, and with that, let the battle begin. The moment the battle started, Naruto leapt away from Xenovia and Gasper before racing toward Kusha. Cyborg's queen raised her hands and created a magic circle in front of her. Lightning blasted from the circle and shot toward him. Naruto created a cross-shaped seal with his hands. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 12 Narutos suddenly appeared where before there was only one. While the real Naruto vanished via Shunshin, the remaining Narutos leapt forward, where the bolts of lightning struck them. They exploded into smoke. As the smoke descended upon the battlefield, Kusha found her view blocked. She narrowed her eyes, created another magic circle, and summoned a powerful gust of wind that blew the smoke away. Naruto wasn't there. "What the heck? Where did he disappear to?" asked Kusha. Barely a second after she said that, the ground underneath her broke apart and Naruto emerged fist first. Kusha was either blessed with great luck or powerful reflexes. She leapt backward just in time to avoid being struck in the chin. However, even as his surprise attack failed, Naruto created 2 more clones that moved in to attack her. As the clones moved in, Kusha created a large hole in front of one of the clones that swallowed him up. Then she created another hole in front of the other clone. The first Naruto flew out of the hole and crashed into the other Naruto, causing both to disappear in a puff of smoke. "That ability of yours is pretty interesting," Naruto said suddenly. "It's a unique ability that only members of the House of Abaddon have, right? Rias told me about it." "That's right," Kusha appeared wary of Naruto, and rightly so. Not just anyone could have a casual conversation with an opponent in the middle of a match. According to her, this power of whole allows you to create and control portals that expand and retract according to your will. With it, you can absorb attacks and reflect them back at other people. That about the gist of it? Shrugging, Kusha said, "Yeah, that's basically how it works. You've certainly done your research." "Oh, no, I haven't done any research. Rias is the one who does all the work," Naruto said with a wave of his hand. "I'm not the kind of guy who puts that much thought into my opponents. I prefer learning about their abilities as I go and creating on-the-fly strategies to deal with them. You know, I like being unpredictable." "Is that so? Just so?" Naruto smiled at Kusha, whose entire body suddenly tensed. "By the way, did you know that you just lost?" "Wah." Before Kusha could finish her sentence, something pierced her chest. She looked down at the wind blade that was now sticking out of her chest, and then she craned her neck and looked back at the Naruto that was standing behind her. She blinked several times. Blood ran down her lips as a resigned smile crossed her face. I understand, all that time you were conversing with me, it was, so you could use one of those clones to sneak up behind me." She looked back at Naruto, who just shrugged. "Basically, I am a ninja, you know." Kusha couldn't say anything as she turned into particles of light and vanished. "Kusha Abaddon has been retired. Well, that was easy." Naruto clapped his hands of imaginary dust as he turned to look at the battle happening between Xenovia, Gasper, and Libin. Now to wait until these two defeat their opponent. The battle between the three seemed to be a bit more complicated than his battle against Kusha. Libin was somehow managing to hold his own. Xenovia was swinging her sword, but it seemed incredibly slow, especially compared to Libin, who was insanely fast. The man would retreat whenever Xenovia swung Durandal, and then come back in with an attack that whittled away at her defenses. At first, Naruto couldn't help but wonder why Gasper wasn't doing anything. However, when he looked at the boy, he realized that because of Xenovia constantly being in front of him, he couldn't freeze Libin. Whenever Xenovia tried move away to give Gasper a clear line of sight, Libin would position her between them again. Also, there was something odd about the way Gasper was moving. It was like his body was stuck in a tub of gelatin or something. "Is that gravity magic?" Naruto mumbled to himself. "No, wait. Didn't Rias tell me that Libin has a sacred gear of some kind? What was it called? Gravity Grail? The Holy Grail? No, wait. That was Fate. After trying to remember what Libin's sacred gear was, Naruto eventually gave up. If he couldn't remember, then it obviously wasn't important enough to remember. As the battle continued, Libin began mixing in several ice spells with his sword attacks. He sent most of them at Gasper, which forced Xenovia to jump back and swing her sword, unleashing a powerful crescent of light that destroyed the attacks before Gasper could be injured. However, the moment Xenovia and Gasper were together, a powerful surge of energy erupted from Libin. Gasper and Xenovia were suddenly forced to the ground. The ground around them began cracking. Naruto noticed how Libin's eyes were glowing. That must be how the sacred gear was activated. "It took a lot more effort than I expected to get you both in a trap," Libin said as he walked forward. "However, now, neither of you will be able to move." "Are you so sure about that?" asked Xenovia. Libin stopped walking as Xenovia struggled to her feet. Her teeth were gnashed together and her eyes were narrowed. Blood was pouring from her mouth, her knees were shaking, and her arms looked like they were being weighed down by several 100-pound weights. but she didn't stop struggling to stand up. "Your physical prowess is impressive, but I'm afraid it won't do any good against me," Libin said. "So you say, but I'll show you not to underestimate a former member of the church." Zenobia swung Durandal horizontally, unleashing a powerful crescent wave of holy power, forcing Libin to dodge. However, the moment he dodged, whatever spell was holding her and Gasper in place seemed to break. "Now, Gasper," Zenobia shouted. "I'm on it," Gasper said. Gasper's eyes transformed as he activated Forbidden Balor View. Now it was Libin who suddenly found himself unable to move. Zenobia raced forward, leapt into the air, and swung her blade as she descended. The attack that she unleashed was another energy blast, which was so massive that it engulfed Libin entirely. The man, unable to move, vanished as the power washed over him. Libin has been retired. Victory goes to Team Gremory. Since they had won, Naruto, Gasper, and Zenobia returned to the Gremory team's base. Once they emerged from the transfer source, everyone present congratulated them. However, Naruto immediately noticed they were missing two people. "Where are Issei and Asia?" he asked. "They went to see Akano in the hospital," Rias said. "I figured since it's the last battle, I would let them leave. Issei's been disqualified, and we didn't suffer any serious injuries this time, so we don't need Asia-chan's healing." That's true. Naruto was actually surprised by how well they had done. They had only lost to Kano, Issei, Kiba, and Roswise. And the only reason they lost Kiba was because he got disqualified for Akano and Asia interfering in his match against Regulus. Rias Peerage still had him, Gasper, Kaneko, and Zenobia. That wasn't mentioning Rias herself. Compared to Cyroorg, who had lost every member but himself, they were in very good shape. Now that Cyroorg only has one card left to play, there is no need to roll the dice, No began. The total value for this game is 12. Rias Gremory, choose who you want to participate in the last match of this rating game. Rias didn't say anything to No's words. She looked over at Naruto, who rubbed the back of his head as he realized what she was asking. Well, it wasn't like anyone else could actually fight Cyroorg. Even Rias knew that even if she and several others teamed up on him, they would still lose. Of course, they could weaken him, but there was really no need, or at least, Naruto didn't think so. "Just leave this to me," Naruto said, thumping his chest. "I'm counting on you, Naruto," Rias said. Walking back into the transfer circle, Naruto was transported back onto the battlefield, where he came face to face with Cyroorg Biel. The man was looking a little out of sorts. He seemed a tad shocked. However, when Naruto appeared before him, a resigned smile crossed his face. "I really underestimated that cousin of mine." He rubbed the back of his head. "I never imagined her servants would be so strong." "Rias has been training a lot," Naruto said. "What's more, I've been helping her." "So I should blame you for my entire peerage being decimated?" asked Cyroorg with a smile. "If it'll help you fight better, sure." As soon as the words were spoken, an aura appeared around Cyroorg. It looked like a white mist almost. However, the power being emitted from that mist was pretty intense. Now that Naruto was up close, he realized this man was a lot stronger than Kokebiel had been. That said, he didn't have the same power as the Greek gods, especially Poseidon and Zeus. Of course, Naruto couldn't use Sage Mode, so that did even things out a bit. "It looks like Rias Gremory has only chosen one servant to battle against Cyroorg," No said. It was a wise choice, Azazel told him. Given Cyroorg's strength, no one else would be able to battle against him except for Naruto, and if others joined in, they would only be in the way. Of course, even if Naruto loses, he's sure to weaken Cyroorg to the point where it will be easy for Rias to beat him. Either way, I'm incredibly excited to see how this match plays out, and with that out of the way, let the match begin. "Devil Ninja, you know, I was really hoping to fight with Issei Hyodo," Cyroorg admitted shamelessly as the battle started. "I know how strong you are, and I honestly am not sure if I'm ready to face such an overwhelming opponent, especially since Regulus was defeated. My trump card is gone." "You don't need to worry about that," Naruto assured the man. "I can't use Sage Mode at present because it carries some risks, and I don't plan on using Kurama either. We're in the same boat." "Is that so?" A smile suddenly appeared on Cyroorg's face. "Well, in that case, I take everything I said back. This battle is sure to be an interesting one." "Exactly my thoughts." Naruto slid his feet across the ground and bent his knees as he adopted a southpaw stance. Cyborg also moved into a fighting stance, though his was a little more loose. Tension hung in the air as Naruto and Cyborg released their fighting spirit, which quickly erupted between them as opposing auras. Naruto's chakra was bright blue and looked like an ethereal flame. Meanwhile, Cyborg's Tuki was pure white. It normally looked like a layer of white energy hovering around him, but right now, it was more like Goku after he went Super Saiyan. For the first time in a while, Naruto actually felt a little excited. He wasn't really into killing. He never had been. However, he loved testing out his abilities against really strong opponents, and while Cyborg wasn't the strongest person he had ever fought against, the man was definitely amongst the top 10, maybe right below Sasuke. 1 second passed. Then 2. After 3 seconds had gone by, Naruto and Cyborg pushed off the ground and slammed into each other. Their fists crashed together, releasing a powerful shockwave that caused the air between them to burst and the ground underneath their feet to rupture. The cracked ground made them both lose their balance. They leapt backward to keep the other person from taking advantage, and then ran in a circle to avoid the destroyed section and attack again. This time, their kicks slammed together. Another shockwave erupted between them. What a fight! They've only just begun exchanging blows and the battlefield is already being decimated, No exclaimed. Naruto leapt backward as Cyborg suddenly threw several punches. His range was somehow extended thanks to his Tuki. Each punch contained an extreme amount of power that ripped the ground it passed to shreds. While Naruto was certain he could just overpower this man's attacks, he decided to fight like a ninja. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Several dozen Narutos suddenly appeared, split apart, and spread out around Cyborg, who eyed the dozens of clones with a curious gleam in his eyes. "This is an interesting trick you've got," Cyborg said. Naruto grinned. "I've got plenty more where that came from." As one, each Naruto clone created a Rasengan. A bright blue orb suddenly appeared above their palms. Then wind began swirling around the orbs, which created several powerful suction forces. A bell-like screech soon emitted from each orb as the Naruto clones raised their hands above their heads. 4 blades appeared on the Rasengans, making the jutsu look like giant Fuma shurikens. Rasen Shuriken. Go! The Naruto clones all rushed forward and thrust out their hands, the Rasen Shuriken screeching loudly enough that even the audience had to cover their ears. Cyborg didn't cover his ears. He bent his knees, tucked his fists into his torso, and began screaming. As he did, his aura exploded from his body. This aura struck the clones, which caused them to disperse since clones couldn't survive even a single hit. Of course, because the clones had been destroyed, the Rasen Shurikens were also destroyed. A massive cloud of smoke expanded from the destroyed clones. Cyborg looked around, unable to see anything within this powerful smokescreen, such as the ground cracking underneath his feet. When Naruto burst from the ground, Cyborg was unable to put up a fight. A fist slammed into his chin, sending him skyward. However, just before he was sent flying, he struck out with his foot, kicking Naruto in the stomach so hard he was blasted from the smokescreen like a rocket. Both Naruto and Cyborg were thrown out of the smokescreen, which quickly dispersed after being disrupted. Naruto flipped his body around, landed on the ground, and skidded backward for nearly 20 meters. Meanwhile, Cyborg flew into the air, flipping end over end. He eventually spread his wings and stopped in midair. Now hovering, he looked down at Naruto, who looked right back at him. And then both of them disappeared. What began was a taijutsu battle between the two as they traded punches and kicks at a speed that many of the devils in the stands were unable to see. Their bodies blurred. Their arms and legs disappeared seconds before a shockwave erupted from their connecting limbs. With every attack that was blocked, the ground behind them collapsed from the resulting shockwave. Despite this, neither Naruto or Cyborg moved from that spot as they continued trading attacks. A punch slammed into Cyborg's face. Another punch struck Naruto in the stomach. The two stumbled back, but it was only for a moment before they were fighting again. What an incredible match! No shouted. Look at these two go. These two are definitely fighting hard, Azazel commented. However, I don't think either of them are using their full strength. While I don't want to paraphrase Metatron, Naruto is a very tricky opponent who generally relies on deception and overpowering his opponents when they least expect it. Of course, He has been known to fight hard when he goes all out, but he normally uses several techniques that raise his strength several times over. Cyborg is similar, Dehauser admitted. He often uses Regulus, equipping the Longinus's armor to increase his strength and durability, but right now, all he is using is Tuki. Of course, with Regulus out of the game, he can't equip him. Naruto and Cyborg heard the two talking about them, but they hardly paid any attention as their focus was on beating the crap out of each other. They traded punches and kicks and even headbutts. It seemed to Naruto that they were almost evenly matched. Cyborg was a bit more durable than him, but he hit harder. However, something had to give. And that something came when Naruto revealed he had a trick up his sleeve. "Hey, how many clones do you think I created?" he asked. "What? Clones?" Cyborg frowned even as they continued fighting. His roundhouse kick was blocked by Naruto's knee, and then he thrust out his fist, which collided with Naruto's punch. "Let's see, didn't you create about 24? So, 24? And how many clones did you destroy?" asked Naruto. Before Cyborg had time to answer that question, a pair of hands erupted from the ground and latched onto his legs. At the same time, someone came up behind him, slipped their arms around him, and placed him in a lock that kept him from using his hands. Cyborg could have broken free, of course. Naruto expected him to do just that, but for 1 second, his opponent was unable to move. 1 second was sometimes all a person needed. Naruto formed a Rasengan, added wind chakra to form a futon, Rasengan, and then slammed it into Cyborg's chest. A cry of pain erupted from Cyborg as the jutsu tore into his chest, shredding flesh and grinding bone. Despite the attack tearing into him, Cyborg gritted his teeth and tried to withstand it. He dug in his heels, flexed his core, and exploded with power. His Tuki against Naruto's Rasengan. The light barrier actually managed to push away Naruto's attack, but he just narrowed his eyes and poured more chakra into his technique, causing it to release a shrill shriek as it tore into the Tuki, finally breaking through the protective layer of energy and grilling Cyborg again. The explosion that went up when Naruto's attack slammed into Cyborg's chest was massive. Cyborg was sent sailing backward from the force, the clones dispelling. He struck the ground, bounced once, rolled across the grass, and came to a stop. Seconds after stopping, Cyborg's body dispersed into particles of light. "I can't believe this," No shouted. With an outstanding display of martial talent, Naruto Uzumaki has defeated Cyborg Bio. The winner of this match is Team Gremory.